They never should have got rid of the old Iana outro pose. Here's a few more things that I miss in Siege. Bandit and Jaeger ACOG was so much fun to use, and I can't believe they aren't bringing them back with the new season. But at least ACOG is returning. The old intro to Siege was a cool thing they had that was kinda unnecessary to take out, along with the intro screen they had for each season. It really gave each season that unique feel, along with the music. I wish they'd bring this back. I understand why it's not in ranked, but Hostage was really fun to play. You could just run in, grab the hostage, and win. I also miss the old maps, even though they didn't really play well. They were still kind of fun because they were chaotic, like House. The last thing I really miss is Recruit Rush. This was one of the most fun things to do in ranked. Getting a 5-stack with the boys and loading up Hostage was all-time goated, and I hope this kind of returns with the Recruit rework. This is future me hopping in, and sadly this didn't happen. Ella was insane when she first came out. 50 rounds in a mag with basically no recoil. Glaz used to be able to shoot through the windows on plane. He also had insane recoil on his sniper and no thermal, so you needed some real eagle eyes to spot people. His original scope actually used to be really red, and then later changed it to clear, then thermal. Speaking of Glaz, when he got buffed, he was one of the best attacking ops. His thermal was instant, and you could use it while moving around. You could hide in a smoke grenade, and anyone who was around was cooked. Old Clubhouse was kinda crazy, because there was no construction connecting the top floor together. Instead of stairs and garage, there was a ladder and the window was closed in between CCTV and garage. And blue stairs weren't a thing yet. There was just nothing there, so basement was even easier to hold. The old ranks used to look way different. The ranks also used to be backwards, meaning you would go from Gold 1 to Gold 2 if you went up a rank. Here's a bit of a better look at all of the old ranks. What do you like better, the new or old design? They need to add throwing back grenades in Siege. It was rare but very satisfying if pulled off. This is a feature I'm not even sure people remember, but being able to rematch the team you just played in ranked was a really cool thing they had. It was rare that it happened, because you needed all 10 people to agree. This is something I'd want to see return. Night maps. I understand why they were taken out, because the lighting was bad, but I feel like they could do a good job now with the lighting. I just like the look and feel of the night maps better. This is a little nitpicky, but I always thought it was cool how it would zoom in on the guy that smoked you. This doesn't need to return, but I did like it. Secure area in ranked was my go-to thing to play for me. You could filter out hostage and bomb and just play secure. But I can understand why it was taken out, but it was fun, because you could have unlimited time in a round if you had a Monty sit in there. I already mentioned this in the last video, but I really do miss these intro screens. I know they got rid of them so you could reconnect to ranked fast, but they were still awesome. You used to be able to take out defenders with a Twitch drone in the prep phase, since the drone did 10 damage with at 1.15 shocks. IQ was basically Warden early on in Siege. She could see through smoke. Also, smoke grenades looked way different. Kavira's old pistol was insane. It had no damage drop-off, along with the old pistol recoil. It was very satisfying to get knocks with it and get interrogations. The Super 90 was basically a sniper, hence the nickname Sniper 90. Old Monty was crazy. Even when cornered, his shield wouldn't move. Another thing was nameplates when you looked at ops, which kinda helped on the night maps. The shield ADS was also insanely fast. When you got smoked in a gunfight but got out with minimal health, you could have someone reset you to 50 health, which would be an absolute game changer in gunfights, and like this clip won me the round. Bartlett University. A lot of people don't even know this map. It's completely removed from the game now, but it used to be in ranked. I think they were going to rework it but turned it into Emerald Plains, so that's all that's left of it. Monty used to have the most broken hipfire with the revolver. You could hit people from across the map with it. One of the rarest things to happen in Siege was double overtime. If you traded when the game was tied 4-4, it was now 1-7. I've only experienced this one time out of my entire time playing Siege, and that was back in year 1 or 2. Blackbeard's shield was nearly indestructible, like there was absolutely no point in trying to break it. Your only hope was if he missed all his shots or a well-placed C4. Both Frost and Kavira used to have a nitro cell, and back in the day, nitro cells were basically pocket-sized nukes. One of the many weird glitches of old Siege was raptor legs. No clue what caused this to happen, but it was only in kill cams and it was hilarious. When you kept scanning enemies, It used to give you 5 points for each person, and you could be on top of the leaderboard with no kills at the end of the game if you spammed it. The old reflex used to have a much bigger triangle, and it was much brighter too. The C4 throw animation looked more clunky, and the old knife animation was a quick swipe. The SMG-11 used to have an ACOG. This was basically a second primary weapon and was great for spawn peeks. Lion was one of the most overpowered ops we've ever seen. He gave legitimate wall hacks, and once you heard this sound, you were dead meat, James.
Nope.
You used to be able to see everyone's ranks right in the game, but now you can only see them on R6 Tracker or if you are partied up. You could dodge a ranked game right up until the match was about to start. Thankfully, you can't do this anymore because the queue times lasted longer with people constantly leaving. Article 5 was a really cool thing they had, and now it's gone completely. You were forced to queue up with 4 other randoms and defuse the White Mask Gang's bombs. It felt like a keystone of old Siege. In old T-Hunt, they used to have these bomber enemies that were absolute tanks and had an explosive radius that was the size of a nuke. This made old Siege a horror game. Glaz used to be able to shoot through castle barricades and make tiny bullet holes. With enough shots, the castle would just straight up break too. Do you think Glaz should be able to do this again? Shield Team 6. This is when every recruit picked the shield loadout, and it was so much fun. Not only could you run 5 shields with just recruit, you could bring a Monty, Blitz, and Fuse along with the 2 recruits. As a defender, this was terrifying to go against. Zofia could just get back up out of sheer willpower. Originally it was 1 health, but they increased it to 5. This mechanic saved so many rounds, including one in Pro League, which is why it got removed. You used to be able to ADS insanely fast with shields. If you lined up a headshot, whoever you were looking at was cooked. The SMG-12 used to have no recoil. I guess you could say there was recoil, but it was so much easier to control. It was basically a free headshot every time, and you could use it like it was a primary. The old operator portraits when waiting for everyone to choose their ops used to look way different, and the background too, with all the smoke moving around. Finka's boost used to give you insanely fast ADS and no recoil, but you didn't keep the health, even if you weren't overhealed. Once that surge was over, that extra health was over too. Maestro used to have one of, if not the best hip fires in the game. This was also back when the laser helped with hip firing. Can't forget his ACOG too. Thermite used to have frags, so he was basically a one-man army. You could deal with the bandit yourself, then get the wall. This is what the old menu used to look like. It was a person with a patch that showed wherever the newest op was from. You used to have to buy attachments, and renown was hard to come by early on, especially when you just got a new op. So sometimes you had to go in with minimal attachments. Blitz's running animation used to completely expose him, but hip firing used to be insane. You could actually snipe people across the map if you lined up your crosshairs. Getting hit by Echo's yokai was the worst thing to deal with. Your screen would wobble back and forth until you stood still. And by that point, you were most likely cooked. Speaking of Echo, he used to have an ACOG, but just 1 drone. That 1 drone could go invisible though, once you stuck it to the ceiling and won a lot of bomb rounds if Echo was off-site hiding somewhere. The old runout timer used to be a generous 2 seconds, as well as the defender's screen turning all yellow, making running out really easy but also a bit of a challenge. Pulse used to be able to insta-swap from his heartbeat sensor back to his primary. And I haven't used it in a while, but I feel like his M1014 used to be kinda crazy. Speaking of Pulse, this is what his old heartbeat sensor used to look like. It was blurrier, and at least visually seemed a bit slower. The quick leaning used to be insane. It was way faster, and was nearly impossible to hit someone doing it, especially when there was a big ping difference. This is what Hibana used to look like on the right and her new one on the left. Honestly, a much needed upgrade. Not sure what they were thinking with the original design. Clash's secondary used to be a 2-burst. That was honestly not that bad, but it's way better now that it's full auto. Clash's shield swap animation was also way faster, so you could really put people in the spin cycle when she first dropped. The old disabling the diffuser animation used to just be smacking the diffuser, and I think it was faster too, but not 100% sure on that. You used to be able to change your weapon from full auto to 3-round burst or single fire. I think they took it out because of people using recoil macros with it. Capkin's traps used to one-shot any operator, but you could also see the laser, and he only had 3 of them. And Capkin was also a 1-speed, so it took him forever to set up. When Malusi first came out, she used to have the T5 and a C4, as well as being a 3-speed, so she was insanely strong. The Roni used to have 20 rounds in a mag instead of 16, which made a bigger difference than you would think. When Golden Gun first came out, it was like a normal game of quick match, so you could use operators' abilities like Oryx. This was the old breaching charge animation. It was slower, but did a lot more damage, so led to some pretty funny moments. Zero had frags when he first came out, but they didn't last long, sadly. Speaking of frags, this isn't old at all, but being able to cook them was the best, and I don't know why they got rid of it. Old Border didn't have bathroom. It was just tellers and then a wall that led to outside, making it a horrendous sight to defend for any game mode. There was almost nowhere to sit on site, and it was super rare that anyone willingly chose to go here. The running used to look a lot different, and also look how bright it is outside. It's like the sun is parked out in the lot. For every operator's birthday, Ubisoft would put out a challenge to get a unique charm or skin. They did dog tags for each op, as well as a birthday wrap skin and charms of each operator ability. Everyone on defense used to have 2 reinforcements each, except Recruit, who only had 1. There was no reinforcement pool, so sometimes walls would just get opened immediately. It also was way slower reinforcing than it is now. You used to be able to one-hit barricades and fly right through them if you hit it at the perfect angle. On Old Border, you used to be able to shoot a zero cam right into archives. Since a lot of people used to sit on the hatch to head glitch the bomb chassis, it led to some golden opportunities that don't happen anymore. Smoke used to have the weakest arm in history, and his smoke canisters wouldn't go more than 2 feet. Frost used to hold her gun by the mag on the side instead of underneath. Ella used to pull out a Grismot mine when she was down. Not only would you stun the enemy, but you could also stop the bomb from being defused. Kinda sad how they take out the little things like this. Nomad's air jabs used to instantly go off as soon as they were shot, if they landed in the proximity of a defender. This didn't make it past the test server though. Bandit used to have 3 barbed wire, and he was the only op to ever have this for the small time it was there. Oryx used to have the MP5 when he first came out, and he was slower to jump up the hatches. He also would take 10 damage when he'd run through a wall, so his pick rate was really low when he first came out. You used to be able to steal people's kills. If someone else knocked an enemy and you got the last shot, you would get the kill, which led to a lot of tragedies. You used to get points when you would knock someone, and bonus points when you did it with Kavira's old pistol. Nomad and Cade's 44 mag used to be really good when it first came out. It had very little recoil, good damage, and had a different scope. Shields did not stop nitro cells if it landed near you. Even when you were full extended with Monty, you were cooked. There used to be like 10 windows in the canal control room, so you had to try and guess which one was there an op with ACOG just staring at a spawn. Pair this with the old lighting and it was a massacre every time someone walked out of their spawn. I definitely miss the vibes of the old night maps. Valkyrie used to be able to throw her cameras outside. Do you think this should return, or was it too overpowered? The old deployable shield was way different, a lot more clunky, and had no little windows on it. You could also use the shield to block someone from vaulting windows if you placed it sideways. Old Theme Park used to have all these train cars in the middle, and you never knew where someone was lurking. Not only this, but the lighting was really bad on this map. Bullet hole peaks. One of the most broken things in Siege history. You would get spawn peeked and then see you got smoked by someone looking through the cracks of time. This old glitch, when Outback first came out, you could phase through the air conditioner, although people caught on pretty quick and started putting frost mats there. When they buffed all the pistols, they all had no recoil and were insanely strong, especially Kavira's pistol. Fortress being in ranked. I feel like this map didn't last too long in ranked, however it is still in quick play. The old hatch reinforcement animation and the reinforcement itself were different. It was a lot slower, and it stuck out of the floor, making it pretty awkward to hit with Hibana. The Lord Tachanka's turret used to be mounted and loaded. Sadly now it's just loaded and not mounted. Originally, Tachanka's turret had no shield covering his head, so you had to hope and pray that the enemy was a bad shot. Tachanka also used to have a different voice actor, and here's a couple of his iconic old lines.
LMG mounted and loaded. Bathroom! Bathroom! Out of ammo! I'm out!
Presidential plane being in ranked. This was one of the most chaotic maps they've ever had in the ranked pool. A close quarters massacre, or when the random would pick Glaz and stay outside on the wing until the end of the round, not getting a single pick. The run-out detection being 5 seconds. This was actually kind of crazy that Ubisoft thought this was going to work. This is what the beta version of Siege looked like. An entirely different HUD and only a couple ops to choose from. Instead of 3 attack or 3 defense rounds, you would alternate defending and attacking every other round. The kitchen on Chalet had a window that attackers could just peek into, and with Prime Blackbeard, it was a free pick every time. This made kitchen and dining one of the worst sites to defend. Goyo used to have his canisters attached to deployable shields, although the fire didn't last nearly as long as it does now. The castle FPS glitch. This was absolutely insane. You could spam the regular barricade and castle barricade, and this would drop everyone's game below like 10 FPS, making it impossible to play. The old pixel peaks used to be crazy, because like in this Bolo clip, he actually gets smoked by Pulse's elbow. The Doc stim glitch. There was a glitch where Doc had unlimited stims, and this is when Doc overhealed for 40 extra health. This was probably one of the most outrageous glitches we've seen in Siege. I can't find a clip of this anywhere, but Castle used to have a deployable shield, and if you put it in front of his barricade, you couldn't breach it, and sometimes couldn't even melee it. When Doka B used to call you, your phone would ring until you answered. Wish I had a baddie call me non-stop like that. The Rainbow Six Siege reveal trailer is now over 10 years old. Absolutely crazy to even think about. The old pistol recoil was crazy, but the old Desert Eagle recoil was something else. As seen in the GOAT Anthony Pitts Blackbeard video, this deagle was nearly impossible to use, with the recoil kicking to the ceiling. Old Hereford Base being in ranked, this map was one of my favorites and they pretty much ruined it with the rework. I think it's completely gone from the game now too. The old destruction with shotties used to be pretty bad. You needed to use a lot of ammo just to make a tiny rotation. You used to be able to climb on the vent on old Café Dostoevsky. This would give you a crazy angle all the way down to the reading door or anyone running under skylight. The old F2, no recoil, had an ACOG, 31 rounds in a mag, and still had the vertical grip. If you were picking Twitch back in the day, it most certainly was not to use her drone. There was a glitch where Jaeger could have his head replaced with a deployable shield. The shield worked too, so you were basically old Blackbeard. The Tachanka 3-speed glitch. If you hopped on and off of Tachanka's turret a few times, it would make you run faster, so this could turn a 1-speed into a 3-speed. Getting swung by a 3-speed Doc was crazy. One of the many Clash glitches was shooting with your shield out. This was one of the most game-breaking glitches we've seen in Siege, to the point where Ubisoft just straight up had Clash removed from the game at a point. There actually was a point where you could break Lion's drone. This didn't last long at all, but it was pretty weird how they even had hit markers for it. You used to be able to climb on the ledge right outside of the tiny control windows on Canal. You could also safely fall off the ledge without taking any fall damage, so it was low risk, high reward. The Invisible and Invincible IQ glitch. This glitch was another insane one that was game-breaking, where IQ's hitbox was still outside, while she could run around inside and be untouchable, unless she hit a trap. You used to be able to glitch outside of the building during the prep phase, so that meant you could wait for the attackers to spawn for easy pickings. Not only was there the glitch with the barricade to get out during the prep phase, but there was the deployable shield glitch that could get you outside too, so this worked on pretty much every map. Casual rounds used to be 4 minutes long, and at the time it was actually called casual, not quick play or standard. On Old Oregon, you used to be able to get inside the washer and dryer, making you completely invincible, and you could hop back out by vaulting the shield. The headshot hitbox used to be horrible. Sometimes you would straight up headshot someone and it wouldn't register, or it would be that you technically hit their helmet. In previous seasons we used to get 2 operators, a new map, new weapons, and a few extra bonus things here and there. And you would get all of these things with the season pass. Ranking up used to be really inconsistent with the ELO. Sometimes you would only get 10 ELO for a game, but the next one you'd lose 50. You could see what this was like in the GOAT Anthony Pitts Platinum Limbo video. Zofia used to have 4 stuns, as well as her usual 2 impacts in her launcher, which was kinda crazy. Barbed wire used to slow you down significantly more than it does now, and I think it was 3 melees to break as well. We were supposed to get a Polish season in year 2, but it got scrapped, and we just ended up getting Ella and Zofia in Blood Orchid and White Noise. During this Polish season, we were supposed to get a new map. No clue if they ended up using it for any current maps we have, or if it's still on the back burner waiting to be released. The Invisible Operator glitch, I don't remember how you did this, but I think it was during Operation Chimera. The only way you could spot someone was by seeing their floating weapons. On Old Chalet, you used to be able to climb up and sit on top of the fridge in the kitchen, just out of view from that small window where Blackbeard always sat. Who can forget Kickstar's iconic Ace on Plane? Rest in peace, Kicks. Yacht used to be a ranked map, and while it wasn't a good one, it was a fun one. Capitau's Fire used to not only look very different, but it acted very different too. It used to kind of float wherever it was shot, and it wouldn't spread around. Very different from what it is now. There used to be no FOV on console, so everyone was locked at 60. Most console games didn't have this at the time anyway, so we didn't really know what we were missing. The Blitz hipfire glitch. If you placed a breaching charge, repelled, got off repel, and pick up the breaching charge really quick, it would give you insane hipfiring. You used to have different ranks on different servers. For example, if you played on a US East Coast server and were Gold 1, you could queue up with people in the UK and get a whole new rank after 10 placements, while still keeping your Gold 1 on East Coast. It used to tell you who did damage to you and also how much they did. Not sure why they took this feature out, honestly, it was cool. I don't remember if this was just a glitch or this is how it was, but in this old clip, Bandit didn't counter Hibana. I've talked about Maestro's hipfire before, but some people forget about the hipfire on the PDW. It was almost as good as Maestro's. Not only the PDW, but the 417s was really good too. There was also a point where it only had 11 rounds in a mag, and was thankfully increased to 21, making it much more viable. Old Favela, not only was it incredibly close quarters and chaotic, but it was also in ranked. I low-key miss this map. I know it's bad for ranked, but it was still a lot of fun. Buck having frags and his DMR having almost no fire cap. Basically could be full auto if you were fast enough. Bodies would not disappear, they would just be lying there, and you could hide in them if you were sneaky enough. Blitz used to have no cooldown on his flashes, as well as having 5 of them, but this was before he could sprint with his shield out. Shields used to be a one-hit no matter the armor or health you had. The old LMG meta. Especially Zofia's LMG, you could just hold the trigger and let 150 rounds fly with absolutely no recoil. And you could still reload cancel at the time too. The old Valkyrie camera glitch on Bank. If you threw a cam out of the map in the back alley, your camera would be completely black, but you'd be able to spot every attacker no matter where they were on the map, and the camera was also indestructible. For whatever reason, Capitao used to have blue smoke. It also looked way different texture-wise, it was like multiple clouds. Thatcher used to destroy gadgets completely instead of disabling them. This included cameras too. This made bandit tricking way more difficult. You used to be able to drop shot while aim down sights, which was one of the best ways to win a gunfight. On Old House, you could climb up into that little tree house and have an angle all the way into master bedroom. Sadly, the spot isn't nearly as good on the reworked house. Speaking of angles on Old House, being able to climb on the dresser in Master if you vaulted over a shield onto it. One of the best spots of Old Siege. In the reveal trailer when they showed the attackers rappelling out of a helicopter instead of just spawning in. This whole trailer is honestly a different game in its entirety. This is what the UI in the beta looked like. As seen in the Goat Russian Badgers video, almost nothing looks the same except for the frag and breach charge logo. These are all the old operator icons in the beta. If the names weren't right below them, there's no shot I'd even be able to guess which op is which. Seriously, just look at Blitz's logo. This isn't really an Old Siege thing, but whatever happened with that Thatcher rework that was shown back during the reveal of Year 7? Did they just end up scrapping the idea altogether? You used to be able to hop out of one of the windows on tower as a defender, which wasn't supposed to be a thing. Any op could hop out of the window, but Doc was the only one that would survive. Once you were down there, you were stuck like Chuck, and the only way you were winning the round was if the attackers threw. There used to be no map or operator banning. Once that game started, you were locked into playing that map and went right to picking your operator for the round. The old matchmaking used to take forever since you could dodge before the game started. You were lucky to make it in, within under a minute, although the queue times today aren't much better sometimes. The old pinging system. There were no numbers on the ping, so saying "over there on my ping" usually ended in a tragedy if there was more than one ping. The old season pass, I wish they would bring this back, but it kinda makes sense why they don't since we're only getting 2 new ops this year. It was actually worth buying back in the day. The Grand Larceny event. You could open up the entire floor on every floor, meaning you could fall all the way through if it was open. On Old Café Dostoevsky, the bomb site used to be kitchen and bakery. Small bakery was not a thing, and the room was really difficult to defend since you could plant right at the front door. And the kitchen layout was different too. Prep had a window to outside and was actually called Bakery Kitchen. The other 2 kitchen rooms were Kitchen Grill and Kitchen Prep. You used to only be able to have 1 drone out at a time. If you had a drone set up somewhere on the map, throwing out your second drone would break the first one automatically. The only gameplay I could find of this was from the GOAT Macie Jay, but Valkyrie used to have 4 cameras. Being able to throw 4 cameras wherever you wanted, including outside, was insanely strong. You used to be able to kick your teammates not only in casual, but ranked games as well. Should this feature return? Smoke used to have a nitro cell, and this was back when they were nukes, so he was a really good shield counter. Ghost Recon Wildlands had a crossover with Siege back in 2018. You had to track down Kavira after she went rogue, and you can play as all the Siege operators all the way up to Parabellum. They even still have the old Hibana in this. The recoil on Buck's AR was outrageous, especially on console. It would bounce all over the place and you had to pull down a lot to control it. His old DMR was the way to go back then. Getting inside of the safety deposit boxes in the vault on bank. This glitch was crazy because you were invincible until you popped out slightly, and this was right where the hostage was. The old Rook armor animation. Not only was the animation different, but it was green instead of blue and Rook didn't automatically pick it up. In the closed alpha, you could actually knock out sections of a castle barricade. You could get some crazy peeks with this if you opened it up from the right angle. Console had a Pro League scene. This didn't last long at all. I think it lasted about a year before they abandoned it. It would be really cool to see this return, especially now since there are so many console players. This was a small thing, but having to press a button to activate your drone. I definitely don't miss this. I'm a bigger fan of the advanced setting. Hibana's pellets used to only be 6 at a time. You couldn't switch it to 4 or 2. And also it was insanely buggy. Sometimes you had to push the activate button multiple times to get it to go off, or only a few of them would go off. The R4C had no recoil and was one of the best weapons on attack for a while. You could just fly in with Ash and cook whoever you aimed at. The drone in the reveal trailer was way smaller than the actual drone that we ended up getting. Imagine the drone spots people would have found if they kept the drones like this. Bolo's insane ace clutch on coastline. The quick leaning, the different recoil pattern for the R4C with black ice, the old pistol recoil, the 5-second plant time. All while remaining cool, calm, and collected. This was Prime Year 2 Siege. On old Hereford in the basement, you used to be able to climb on top of the shelves. This was a great spot back when the game first came out, because it caught people off guard. That sprinkler and alarm that was constantly making noise in the basement hallway on Bank. I don't remember when they changed it, but it was one of the best changes they've ever made to Bank. You used to be able to glitch out the MVP pose in T-Hunt. All you needed to do was finish the game where the characters stand, and it would glitch out. This was one of the funniest glitches that I don't think too many people knew about. The blood in this game actually used to be insane. You could paint an entire room red if you killed a few people in the same area. When Prime Lion, Finka, and Blitz had the Pro League scene in absolute shambles. Every round you'd see Lion picked in a super aggressive attacking round. Lion almost ruined Siege Pro League. Doc didn't have an overheal ability. His stim pistol was only used for reviving either yourself or your teammates to 75 health, which was honestly a big deal back in the day. I couldn't find a clip of this anywhere, but I think if you hit your teammates with a stim pistol while they were up, it would actually do damage. The old operator selection screen. There were only a handful of ops, especially at launch, but it's honestly crazy how many ops we have now. I'm actually in an old Evan Braddock video called The Recruit Anthem. The video is almost 7 years old, and it was really cool to see my friend and I in this video. You can see my PlayStation name that I still have, the Ninja Gamer 99. I made it when I was 12 and thought it was cool. Fortress being in ranked. This map was massive and definitely wasn't my favorite to get, but I still had fun on it. I'd like to see this map return with a rework fixing some of the chaotic sites on this map. This infamous Bolo clip always gets me.
Pick a Bolo, pick a Bolo, pick a Bolo, someone pick a Bolo!
My ears. Oh, hey, I appreciate that.
Reflex C used to be the only sight you could use on Clash's secondary, along with it being a 2-burst. It honestly wasn't that bad, but it's definitely better having it full auto with whatever sight. When Legion could steal Frost's kill with his goo mine if he threw one on her frost mat. I'm not gonna lie, I definitely was the Legion player that would do this to get on the board if I was at the bottom. The old grenade glitch. If you pulled out a frag and put it away really fast, the frag would still go off, usually resulting in a tragedy. Not needing to be level 50 to play ranked. I think originally you could hop in at any level, then they raised it to 20, then to 25, then 50. But not 100% sure. Smoke gas canisters used to clip through walls, and this was also allowed in Pro League, which was kinda crazy. Capital used to have a scope on his LMG. This sight was honestly super underrated and is one of the cleanest and best looking scopes we've had. It's still in the game, but only for DMRs, and it's now a 3.5 zoom instead of 3. Thermiting the classroom wall on Old Oregon so you could get both the wall and the hatch in one go, giving you the angle looking down into laundry. Honestly, once this hatch was open, the attackers won the round. The Twitch Prime Alpha packs. This was a cool idea even though everyone got the same thing and everything in the packs were mediocre at best. But they should bring these back in some way with better cosmetics. Jaeger used to have 31 in a mag instead of 26. Even after they took his ACOG, his primary was still really good and he still had a very high pick rate. Sometimes when you would do any action like placing a claymore, you would just randomly teleport. No clue what caused this. Zofia's AR was one of the best in the game. No recoil, good mag size, and solid ADS speed. Not only was her AR really good, but she was a 2-speed, so you could get around the map quicker. It's kinda crazy how good she used to be. Her primaries and secondary were really strong. She had 4 stuns along with the 2 impacts. She could self-revive and was a 2-speed. Ella and Zofia used to be more resistant to each other's concussions. They would recover twice as fast compared to any other operator. The reason for this is something to do with the lore that the Polish sisters have been hit by this effect so many times, they've become more resistant to it. Lesion's goo mines used to do 10 damage when you would step in one, as well as 8 damage per tick. They were also cloaked, so stepping in one was a lock. All the Russian ops were forced to use the Russian sights. They had the Russian Reflex, Red Dot, Hollow, and ACOG. They are still in the game, of course, but now anyone can use them. Back when Siege launched, they had no anti-cheat at all. And believe it or not, they actually do have one now, although who knows if it's turned on. I know I've showed off that you can break Lion's drone, but what I forgot to show was after breaking the drone, trying to activate it would actually crash the server. The shadow figure glitch. No clue what caused this one to happen, but it was pretty funny. Your operator would just kinda glide while T-posing around the map and you were just a shadow figure. Even after you croaked, your body would be stuck like that. The bird box glitch. Prepare your eyes for this one because there's gonna be a lot of flickering. For whatever reason, shooting at a soft wall with a ton of ammo would cause your screen to bug out and you literally couldn't see anything. Defenders could just change a setting to fix it, but for whatever reason attackers couldn't. So obviously this was super broken in ranked. The invincible Monty glitch. If you threw a drone and dropped your shield at the same time, you would basically become... Sorry, had to sneak that one in. But yeah, this was another game-breaking glitch. Getting under the map downstairs on old Hereford base. This made attacking downstairs nearly impossible. The only way this was countered was when your head was sticking slightly out of the ground. I've talked about the Jaeger shield head before, which was crazy, but there was a point when any op with a deployable shield could do it. Defending 3rd floor on Favela when you played secure area. Shout out to Geeking from my Discord for sending me the clip. But this was insanely chaotic because any wall could be opened with thermite, or if a teammate didn't reinforce, since there wasn't a reinforcement pool yet. Sitting in that little closet on Chalet with a Mira. This was a nice little spot to defend since the only way in through the back was either the hatch or the wine door. You had to make sure the closet wall stayed closed though. You used to need to hit enemies in the head with Echo's yokai drone in order for it to work. And it most certainly did, since it made your screen all wobbly and you were basically stumbling around blind. Mute's jammer used to have a very bright red outline when you were going to put down a mute jammer. It also covered much more of an area. I think it was 3 reinforcements. When you were dilly-dallying not picking an operator, it would just auto-pick recruit for you every time, on both attacking and defending. When Zofia's withstand was taken out shortly after that one moment in Pro League, this had the whole Siege community divided, getting stuck in the infinite hatch drop. Not sure if this was the servers, or just the game itself being buggy, but when you dropped down a hatch, you would just infinitely fall and teleport back up. Kinda like when you're playing Portal. Climbing up on this rock on Old Chalet would just send you falling out of the map. Once you hopped over, that was all she wrote for you, because you just hit a barrier that would cause you to croak. Doka B couldn't call Echo. Since Echo used the little gadget on his wrist to control cameras, he wouldn't get a call. Now he has a random phone he pulls out. Sometimes when you would thermite a wall, it just wouldn't fully open. I'm not sure if this still happens because personally I haven't seen this in a while.
Cool.
Another random glitch that I'm not sure what even caused it was the weird spectating glitch. Like in this clip, I was spectating my friend, and he vaults a window and teleports across the map, being able to knife someone through a mirror window. If they got too close, you could melee through it. Defenders used to randomly fuse together with a reinforcement. It worked like a reinforcement too, making them partially bulletproof. No clue what caused this, but it was pretty funny. For whatever reason, they changed the sound of the SMG-12 for a little bit. This is what it sounded like.
Yeah, I'm getting pushed. Where the hell is he? He's around in the building.
Compared to what it sounded like originally, and now currently. Mute used to be a 2-speed, but he didn't have the SMG-11. His jammers were definitely a lot stronger too. They covered way more of a radius. I think up to 3 walls. The old operator logos during Operation Chimera. I kinda like these better since they have more color and are a bit more vibrant. Getting under the map on yacht. I personally never did this one, but it seemed like it was really easy to do. Alls you needed to do was prone into the ice and you'd fall under the map. Both sides couldn't shoot each other, so it was just for fun. The Chimera theme and menu. I definitely miss this, and I think Ubisoft should let you customize what theme you want. The hatches used to be double the size in the alpha, still not big enough to fit gridlock through it though. They would need to be the size of the entire map. When Alibi and Maestro first came out, their shotgun was buckshot instead of slugs. This was obviously before Azami, but it would have been interesting to see how she would have played with it. I'm not 100% sure about this one, but I think you used to be able to hear enemy callouts, like someone saying reloading, or Smoke saying babes in position. This is the only clip I could find of hearing the enemies, but it's just them reinforcing. There was a window next to the reading door and pillar that would give you a crazy angle all the way into mining and train. And this was great because it was the most popular secure area site. Cav's pistol used to have 16 in a mag instead of 13. Cav's old pistol was actually insanely strong, especially when they changed the recoil on all the pistols. She would dominate the lower rank lobbies. That little connector between dining and main lobby that everyone would fill with barbed wire and traps. There was almost always a frost mat there. If you stood in this specific spot on Favela next to this plant, you would just die. The exhibition side of Skyscraper was very small and condensed. Dragon also wasn't a thing, it was just a wall that led to outside. The minibar was moved up a little more, and in the actual exhibition room, if you broke the glass, an alarm would go off. How good the M1014 was. This thing would put people down so fast, and was actually viable on a lot of maps, because it was so condensed. Like in the Goat Macie Jay's clip I'm showing here. It was ridiculous on plane. I mentioned in a previous video about this little connector on Old Chalet, and how it was always filled with traps, but I forgot to mention how people would always hide in the bushes on each side, relying on your teammates to reinforce on Old Favela football apartment site, otherwise the attackers could just spray through the wall at headshot level and get a free pick. On Old Border, there was no balcony connecting break room and east stairs. The only way out of the break room was impacting and dropping down if you couldn't push through CCTV. During the alpha, there were hit markers, and I'm not talking about when you kill someone, I mean when you actually hit someone. Instead of bar being all one bomb site, it was stocks and bar, so you could just plant right at the stocks door, making the retake for defense almost impossible. There was honestly no reason to ever choose this site, unless you were just messing around. Back when Hostage was in ranked, you'd just pile all the traps, shields, and barbed wire around the hostage. It was an easy way to win rounds and rank up back in the day. How dark old theme park was. Vigil and Cav were crazy on this map. You could basically hide in any corner because the lighting was so bad, especially on the night version. It was honestly like playing a horror game on attack. Ella's shotty was one of the best shotties on defense. If you swung anyone even from a slight distance, you were putting them right in a dirt coffin. On Old Oregon, when you played secure, you could contest the basement site from the stairs, so it was either a standoff until someone peeked, or if you had a teammate up, they'd go and flank since you had unlimited time. In the closed alpha, shield ops could aim with their shield up. This would have been outrageous if they launched like this. You used to be able to shoot through the little grates that were on the bomb chassis. Like in this clip, if you paired it with a shield, it led to some crazy peaks. On Old House, you could climb up on the shed outside and look right into master window. This was great because people weren't really aware of things like this when the game first came out, so you could really take advantage of it. Some of Hibana's pellets sometimes just wouldn't go off. As seen in the GOAT Anthony Pitt's Hibana video, this was right after Operation Health. You only needed one Hibana pellet to break hatches. This was great because you could hot drop the hatch while taking minimal damage. Doing this with all 5 attackers was so much fun. Sledge used to be a 2-speed, and he had the SMG-11. I don't really understand why Sledge got nerfed so much. He was probably one of the most balanced operators of Old Siege. He's still great now, but he was for sure better before. Getting in between the floors on Bank. If you crawled under a certain part of the desk in main lobby, you would end up in between the floors, and you could shoot anyone that went into lockers. Spawn peeking with Tachanka's turret was crazy because you were almost invincible since you were covered by the shield and windowsill. The Ella mine in the drone hole on Old Skyscraper. Of course I learned this trick from the Goat Macie Jay, but you would throw a mine in the drone hole, wait for it to pop and hop out the prepped window for a free pick. A double down on secure area. This can still happen, but only in casual, so I'm talking about the intense ranked moment. When you would trade with someone on the secure site, and you would try and slow your bleed out faster than the other guy. This was super intense if it was the final round of a ranked match. There used to be 2 hatches in meeting on Old Oregon. The hatch that's no longer there dropped into the hallway but was also really good for cutting people off. Imagine how different current Oregon would be played if they had a hatch in the basement hallway. I've talked about how you could take people out in the prep phase with Twitch's drone, but I didn't mention that it couldn't jump. Alls it took was a deployable shield in a doorway to stop it from getting into sight. The Void Edge theme, that's all that needs to be said. On the test server a while back, they let Oryx jump up the rooftop hatches. It would be really interesting if they ever added this in. Believe it or not, Jackal mains used to exist. They are super rare nowadays since he's banned in about 80% of the ranked games that are played. But back before pick and ban, you would see a Jackal in almost every match. When Tachanka got his rework, they were originally going to give him the Zofia withstand. But I don't even think this made it to the test server. Ying's Candelas used to go off as soon as you threw them. Basically, they worked opposite of how they do now. But you could toss all of them into a room and blind everyone all at once. The basement on Old Canal used to look way different. Instead of yellow stairs and scuba, there was just a wall and a doorway that led right to outside. Only one way up and down for the defenders. No little downstairs part with the ladders either. And of course, the lighting looked different too. That peak where you would look out from second floor laundry on Old Hereford, that would give you an angle all the way down on the people in the trench. And also look at how bouncy the old Jaeger recoil was. The Mute Protocol event glitch. This glitch pretty much sucked all the fun out of this game mode, which was honestly pretty sad that people were doing this in a limited time event. To explain the Mute Protocol glitch a little bit more for the people who don't know about it, basically wherever your drone went, that's where you went, and for whatever reason, when you threw your drone under the map, when your drone finally broke, you would be invisible and invincible. This pretty much ruined the event, which is sad because it was actually fun. On Coastline, you used to be able to hop up on the tarps and look into hookah right from spawn. I think you can still get here with an OSA shield, but I'm not 100% sure. But obviously this method was way easier. Speaking of Coastline, instead of a wall going into VIP, it was a window. So it was a great spot to cut defenders off running back to site. Shout out to Katja for getting me this clip. But it used to be 3 maps instead of 5 for the pick and ban phase. So sometimes you would play the same map multiple times in a row, like in this clip. Head glitching this little rooftop on Old Skyscraper let you see the balcony on the other side. This was a great spot to hop out for defenders. The old holographic site used to look different. It was smaller, and the reticle was a little bit brighter. Here's a side-by-side comparison of the current one versus the old one. The vibes of nighttime favela. This map may not have played well, but it was one of my favorite night maps to play on, just to see the fireworks and hear all the sounds in the background. But shout out to Verge Poland from my Discord for getting me this clip. The suppressor used to have damage drop off, no matter what weapon it was equipped to, except for Cav's pistol, of course. Suppressors weren't nearly as viable as they are now. This is a little nitpicky, but I miss being able to revive your teammates after the round ended. I don't know if this was supposed to be in the game or not, but in the reveal trailer, the defenders could move the hostage around the map. I think this would have been a cool idea if they had this feature, but only after the attackers grabbed them. How difficult old knifing used to be. I've talked about it before a bit, but I never mentioned how you needed to be in someone's back pocket to actually knife them. Like that Ash sold, because she tried to knife me in this clip. They disabled the Mute Protocol to fix the invisible and invincible glitch, and when they added it back in, there was still another glitch where you could get in the ceiling. Unfortunately, this just ruined the game mode altogether. The alibi Prisma spot on border. If you threw a Prisma out through the roof right in this spot, the Prisma would activate in a spot where no attackers could get to it, so the attackers would constantly see enemy detected outside, making it much easier to run out. Jaeger's ADS used to have multiple charges per gadget, but when you burnt through all of them, that was the end of that ADS. But if you had them stacked, the attackers had to burn so much utility to get through. Jackal had flashes when he first came out, so not only was it annoying getting tracked, but having 3 flashes fly in the room and being full blind while he knows exactly where you are was the worst. In the reveal trailer, they showed off how you could breach any part of the floor, and it would open up like it was a hatch. Could you imagine how crazy this would be if you could just open up the entire floor, like you could in the Grand Larceny game mode? This isn't really that old, but Vigil had a 1.5 for a very small amount of time. The only gameplay of this is from Coconut Bra, but this would have been crazy if it made it. On Old Oregon, you could hide inside these piled up desks and chairs. You were practically invisible, and this was a great spot for Cav. Her pistol was still crazy, and it was so easy to see out of. The old somersault glitch or movement. Not really sure what to call this one. It was pretty funny though. You had to keep switching prone positions, where your legs go in front of you and behind you. There used to be a hatch in the upstairs hallway on Bank. This made defense on open area even more difficult since this hatch cut off so many different spots for defenders to sit or move around. The old Oregon attic had a whole different layout. Instead of extending out, it was closed off with 2 walls, but it had a ladder that went into meeting. Also, the window that was just a small rectangle, perfect for Blackbeard. But there was no window you could hop into. Monty used to have 3 smokes, and this was when the smokes used to look different too. But the smoke and plant used to go crazy with all these smokes. There was a glitch on Old Clubhouse where you could rappel backwards up into an AC unit on the roof, and it would push you down onto that part of the catwalk you're not supposed to get onto. That spot on Yacht where you could hide inside the pipes in the subroom. The lighting was really bad, so it was nearly impossible to see someone in here unless you already knew about the spot. You could destroy Hibana's pellets through a mirror window, stopping her from breaking it if you were fast enough, and this was before you could crack the mirror window. When switching through cameras, the broken ones would still be there, and they would just be that TV snow effect. The change to cameras was honestly a great one. Servers on Old Canal wasn't as tucked away as it is now. There was only one hallway in the front, and green stairs didn't exist yet. It was just an outside balcony. There were also windows all over the site. Attackers could just rappel and see right in. There used to be no reverse friendly fire, so if you team killed twice, you would just automatically get kicked, as seen in the Goat Tio's video. This can still happen, but only if you kill multiple teammates with an explosive. Tachanka's old operator video when you'd unlock him. Since he got reworked, it's no longer in the game, which is kinda sad since he still uses his LMG even though it's not mounted. The Madhouse event. This was one of the first events that Siege had, and it was fun for spooky season. It was just a game of casual on house with a spooky theme and dark lighting. They also put out some really cool skins for this event. The old mannequins on Clubhouse. They actually looked like people, and were a nice little spot to hide behind as a defender, especially with the old lighting. On Old Oregon, it was actually viable to flank Dorm's window from small tower as a defender, since the window was in a different spot, and the runout time was still a generous 2 seconds. You used to need to wait for Cav's silent step to fully recharge to use it again, which was around 8 seconds. Not too bad, but only having to wait half of that now is much better. I've talked about Glaz's gun before, but I never mentioned how he only had 11 rounds in a mag. He also could only use the Russian sights, and he couldn't use a grip, although he didn't really need one. Ace's Selma charge used to have 3 charges instead of 2, which allowed attackers to walk right in only using 1 Selma, if it was placed in the right spot, rather than needing to vault or crouch your way in. Vigil's old ability. This is a pretty recent change, but this guy keeps asking for me to mention this on every video, so this is for you, Ghost Guy. Vigil used to completely cloak him from drones, but any action would take him out of his ability. Now he's more similar to Knock. Smoke used to have impacts, which were another great thing to help him counter shields after he lost his nitro cell. When the map ban used to be 3 maps instead of 5, no matter what, it would always be the map to the left that was picked. So basically you could straight up pick the map you wanted, but this led to only like 4 to 5 maps being played all the time. There was a weird glitch on secure area if the enemy was basically almost done securing the site, but the defenders killed everyone. It would still give the win to attackers. This was tragic, especially after an all-time clutch. There was only one color for all the optics, which was red, except for the reflex sight, which was the only sight that was green. I've talked about the gridlock-sized hatches before, but I didn't show how shotties couldn't open up hatches. You needed to use a C4, and it would only open up half of it, and this was also before impact grenades were a thing. Operation Shifting Tides was the first season to not have the iconic 5 notes played in the intro, since both Callie and Wamai are members of Nighthaven and not Rainbow. These are the 5 notes I'm talking about. Being able to reload cancel. This was crazy because you would wait for the reload sound cue and swing someone only for them to be aimed right at your head since they canceled their reload. Before CAD was a thing, the way to stop people from opening the hatch on Old Oregon was by putting a mute jammer on the table in laundry. You could also do this for the other hatch in the hallway if you climbed up on these boxes. Keeping these hatches closed was crucial. Those bars on the vault window and bank that would sometimes prevent you from shooting whoever was behind them. On Clubhouse, you could just vault up onto the other part of the catwalk. Doing this with Vigil was crazy since not many people knew you could do this. Tactical realism. This was a custom game feature that was sadly removed, I guess because it wasn't popular enough. But in tactical realism, you had very limited HUD. You couldn't tell the difference between your teammate and enemy, since there were no names or icons above their head. If you reloaded with 15 bullets left in a mag, you'd lose those extra 15 bullets. No objective was marked and you didn't see points for doing anything, and also no kill hit markers. This is something I'd really like to see return. The Money Heist event. It was just hostage on bank, but it had some really cool cosmetics, and the theme for this event was all-time goated. I think this was also one of Siege's first big crossovers that wasn't Ubisoft related. There was a glitch on Old Oregon, where if you planted next to the washer by main stairs, defenders couldn't disable the diffuser. This was really random and didn't always happen, but was annoying when it did. Malusi's Banshee used to be bulletproof, so the only way you could get rid of it was by meleeing it or hitting it with some kind of explosive. It also had a much wider area of effect, the vibes of old nighttime coastline. This is another prime example of why I want night maps to return. The map is just more enjoyable and has a much better vibe at night. It reminds me of summer of 2017. And shout out to Verge Poland from my Discord for getting me this gameplay. I'm not 100% sure about this one, but I think vaulting was faster if you were sprinting at the window. You could actually tap Firefrost's gun faster than it actually shot in full auto. Here's a comparison from the GOAT Serenity.
This is full auto. And then I'm gonna shoot. Tell me if it's faster.
That's faster.
Yeah!
When Maestro would talk about Ash's head hitbox being small.
How does anyone manage to shoot Ash? Her head is so small.
The animation for meleeing a barricade was much different in the E3 build of the game. It was more of a lunge rather than a smack with the butt of your gun. Individual operator stats. Each operator used to have their own stats, where you could see KD, win-loss, time played, and a few more things. This was a really cool feature, and I think this is something that should most certainly return. I'm not even sure why it was taken out in the first place. That pixel peak on Old Clubhouse where you could look right into Oil Pit. This was also before blue stairs were a thing, so all you needed to worry about was Stock's hatch getting opened. The old SMG-11 had no recoil. You were better off using this as your primary, especially since it had ACOG. Spawn peeking used to go crazy with this too. When Glaz first got buffed, peeking through the bullet holes you'd make on a castle barricade was insanely overpowered, since all you needed to see was a bright yellow guy for a free pick, the GHS compensator. This was the only pistol to have a compensator, and I have no clue why. But shout out to Weirdo26 from my Discord for getting me this clip. There was a glitch where you could have multiple of the same operators. Could you imagine something like 5 cap cans? That's 25 traps you gotta worry about. Back before reverse friendly fire, Cav could down all of her teammates with her pistol since it's always a knock, no matter where you hit the person. Then you could leave the game, and your team would lose the round. But shout out to A9EO from my Discord for the clip. I know the servers still aren't the best sometimes in current Siege, but the old servers were pretty bad. It was rare having good ping, even with wired connection. Like in this old clip, you can see how delayed everything is, and also how no one has good ping. The longest round ever recorded was from 8 years ago, and I'm not even joking. It was an hour long, and it wasn't even a ranked game. The secure area standoffs were notorious, but this was on a whole different level. You used to be able to play the drum on Skyscraper. Now unfortunately it breaks when you hit it. On Old Oregon, the hatch in the kids' bedroom was on the opposite side, and dropping down it would lead you into a pantry, and there was no kitchen corridor, but there was a door that led right out of the kitchen next to classroom. The ACOG in the E3 build of the game looked a lot different, but it would actually be really cool to play this version of Siege. Mira originally had a different voice actress. Not sure why she got changed, but here are some of her old quotes.
I'm taking it down! Get your ass ready! I got this! I got this! I'll be watching you! Let me have a look at you, capullos!
This is what she sounds like now.
Let me have a look at you, capullos! Detonating nitro! Secure the hostage.
When Amaru first came out, when you would fly into a window, you were locked in place for a second. And that second was all the difference in a gunfight. But shout out to Mika from my Discord for sending me this clip. There was a glitch on Old Consulate at the Riot barricade spawn. If you drove your drone into the wall, you could see a lot of the basement. And obviously the defenders couldn't see this drone, so it was pretty strong. Capital used to be able to shoot his firebolts through the tiles on Villa, and they'd actually land in spots that people would commonly sit in, like Astro or Bathroom. But these spots were all over the map, and not too many people knew about it. The Showdown event. This is one of my top 5 Siege events. It was a lot of fun, and the music for this game mode was awesome. The DeLorean from Back to the Future. This was a really cool Easter egg in the Showdown event, where they had the DeLorean hidden in a cave, just like it was in Back to the Future Part 3. Ash's grenade launcher used to make more of an oval-shaped hole, rather than what we have now, which is a bit more rounded and bigger altogether. Glaz's rifle used to do 180 damage, which is actually insane. This meant he could one-shot any operator no matter the armor. But shout out once again to Verge Poland from my Discord. This guy has been collecting old Siege gameplay like they are Infinity Stones. I don't think you can do this anymore on Clubhouse, but hopping up on the crates and impacting to see all the way into Oil Pit. If this is still a thing, at least doing this with the SMG-11 ACOG isn't. In the E3 build of Siege, the kill cams used to be in third person, and the third-person kill cam did actually make it to the game, but only for T-Hunt bombers. During Operation Chimera, they had their own special packs as they usually have for events, but you could get an Ash Elite skin out of these packs called Black Viper. This cutscene that would play when you failed to save Jaeger during Outbreak. Silent dropping. If you were prone while falling down a hatch or a ledge, you would be completely silent. This was especially great with Cav, but I think silent drop also might have returned this season. Unintentionally, of course. Looking away from flashbangs would allow you to completely avoid being blinded. Now, if it lands within a certain distance of you, you'll be blind no matter what. But if you're facing away, you'll be blind for less time. Ash used to have flashes. She was incredibly strong with the 3 flashes, and her old R4C. I think she had one of the highest pick rates when she had all this, since she could almost do everything. If someone didn't have the diffuser picked up, you wouldn't be able to see where the bomb site was, even after it was spotted. Being able to team kill in the prep phase. This was the best, but also the worst, especially if you just didn't clutch around. The Legion hostage glitch. You would injure the hostage a little bit, then Legion would throw his goo mine up in the air and leave the game as fast as he could before the goo mine hit the ground. Once he left, the mine would still be there and go off, downing the hostage. But for whatever reason, it would count as the attackers downing the hostage, giving defense a free round. Lasers used to be visible, and I'm not talking about when you see it on a wall. I mean the laser in its entirety, like the whole line from start to finish. The vibes of old Cafe Dostoevsky at night. This is another map that's just so much better at night, with all the Christmas lights on and in Cafe, as well as the buildings in the surrounding area. Speaking of old Cafe, there was no balconies on either side of the 3rd floor, so obviously there was no second roof hatch. You couldn't even break the walls on either side where the balconies currently are, since it was all concrete. But once again, shout out to Verge Poland for the gameplay. On Old Cafe, there was a drone hole that let you look right into the hallway next to white stairs, cutting off anyone running into reading or laundry. There was a room that was filled with nitro cells on Old T-Hunt, and just hearing all of them beeping still gives me PTSD. Not only was there the nitro cell room, but there was also a room just filled with barbed wire. Not really sure what the purpose of this was, but once again shout out to Verge Poland from my Discord for the gameplay. In the Siege Alpha, there was a graph that would show off when you got a kill or killed someone, and it would show when it happened in the round too. I would like to see this return in some way, maybe something they could have for post-game. Back when Select Fire was in the game, people would use rapid fire macros. Basically, you'd have no recoil and a fast fire rate. In other words, they were cheating and sadly never got banned, at least on console, can't speak for PC. On Old Chalet, there was a second set of stairs in West Main that led up to what is now Piano. There was also a doorway that led into West Main right to outside instead of just a window. You used to be able to put mirrors on hatches. Nah, I'm kidding, this is photoshopped, but it would have been hilarious. In the Alpha, the P90 sounded much different. I honestly like this sound better, sounds more realistic.
Oh, they're going for it. He's gonna find it.
On Old Clubhouse, there were the tinted windows in garage above Raptors that you could shoot through. I believe both sides could do it too. The first time I saw it was from this very clip from Serenity 17. On Old Border, you could actually shoot through the cracks of time and archives getting anyone out on AC window. The old P9 iron sights, this is a very slight difference, but here's a side-by-side comparison. Basically, the old one has circle night sights, and the new are triangles. Back on Old Hereford base, you could sit up in the laundry room and impact trick the trench, which was pretty important to keep closed. Back when you could see nameplates, they were visible through smoke, which was obviously very broken. Pretty much a glass before he had his thermal. Mute's old victory pose. Why would they get rid of this? This was a really cool thing to have, and I don't see the point of getting rid of it. On Old Cafe, you could open up the top part of the kitchen wall next to red stairs and sit on the railing, giving you a great angle into the kitchen, pretty much cutting off that spot looking into prep where everyone put miras. You could also do this on Old Hereford base at the trench wall, which was another great spot to sit. The old drone pickup animation. This was pretty goofy looking. Kind of looks like the operator was just slapping it with both arms. But once again, shout out to Verge Poland for the gameplay. There was no advanced drone deployment back in the day, so once you threw your drone, you hopped right on it. This led to a lot of tragedies because of siege timing. Another crazy angle was on Old Canal where you open the server hatch and kitchen window, letting you look down on the outside stairs. Not only was there the hatch angle, but standing on the table let you look through the little server grates out the hall and server window. The old Oregon theme. Don't get me wrong, I think the new one is great, but the old one is just perfect. It feels really fitting to the map, especially since it's based off of the Waco compound. Ash's breaching round didn't break open castle barricades in the alpha. They would just bounce off and fly right back at you. When Vigil and Dokkaebi first came out, the Boss G didn't have an ACOG, and I'm pretty sure the Siege community is responsible for it getting added, because so many people were asking for it. Sometimes putting up a barricade was super glitchy and would launch you backwards. Shout out to Odd from my Discord for the clip. The first ever Battle Pass was only 7 tiers. It was free for everyone, but was only in the game for about a week. This tied in with the introduction of Harry, hence the name. Rainbow is magic. The first time this was added was back in 2019, and it was actually just regular hostage instead of TDM. It was also poorly received at the time, since this is when the skins started to get a little crazier and steered away from the tactical uniforms. But now I feel like it's aged like a fine wine. Hiding under the tables in bar on Old Clubhouse. This is another great spot I learned from Serenity 17, and it was great with Cav, who was still in her prime at the time. I don't think this specific cheat has happened recently, but cheaters were able to fly around the map with aimbot. It's just really funny how bad Battle Eye was, and honestly still is. The blue bar glitch. You could prone up to the couch and start floating. Then you could prone your way over to the bar and hide inside of it. And of course, this was a perfect spot for Echo. Another great hiding spot from the GOAT Serenity 17 was in the kitchen on Old Clubhouse. Because of the old lighting and really dark spot, you could not be seen. Yet again, another great spot for Cav. On Old Theme Park, the layout of Initiation and Office were a lot different. Everything felt more cluttered and condensed, as well as it being insanely dark, even on the daytime version of the map. This was a small change to Coastline, but a nice one. You weren't able to barricade the luggage windows. Back when Secure Area was in Ranked, the basement was one of the most picked sites on Villa, and now no one ever goes down there because there's no site, and just no point to go down there. I definitely do miss Secure Area in Ranked. You used to be able to survive claymores when you overhealed yourself with Doc. If you try it in current Siege, you get knocked. On Old Chalet, Blue used to cut off at the door going into Snowmobile, so there was no second door that led into Wine. On Old Border, the bathroom was much smaller and wasn't connected to tellers at all. There was also no hatch either. The only way in and out was from the doorway, unless you had to rotate into Workshop. The skylight glitch on Villa. If you kept spamming the rappel, you could maneuver your way onto the skylight, giving you some decent angles onto Astro, Statue, Trophy, and Red Hall. The skylight on Border still had a wall there, but it was lower, so you could see the hallway as well as bottom east stairs. And of course, this was before the catwalk connecting Break Room and East was added. Getting in the van on Old Consulate. I really don't know how people find this stuff, but you'd put a shield down in antechamber and then break the bottom part of the barricade and keep proning and getting up until you fell into the van. Similar setup to the previous glitch, but this one was on bank, and when you would prone in between the door and shield, you would fall in between the floors. Cheaters used to be able to sprint around with Clash's shield out. It's pretty goofy looking, but I wonder if this was ever intended by Ubisoft. On Old Oregon, one of the bomb sites was both floors of tower. I know this won't happen, but I would honestly love for this site to return since I have the most fun defending the worst sites, and I know this would be super chaotic. Also, another thing about tower was the wall next to the stairs was soft, so you could watch the tower door from there. This clip of Bolo getting hit by a C4 is always hilarious.
Oh my.
Oh. Fuck, man. My heart's not ready for this type of shit.
The old texture glitch on Villa. No clue what caused this one, but it was really funny but also really annoying. Just a bunch of random objects in places they shouldn't be. Hiding under the table on old skyscraper in the office. This was even better when you were playing bomb, since you could hide in between the chassis and table. This iconic old clip of the guy breaks trying to figure out how to get into objective.
King Herb!
I don't know how!
If you don't, he will die and we will lose.
I don't know how to get the room. I don't know how to speak to you, you fucking monk.
Are you retarded?
Yes.
Get in.
How?
One op 4 remaining.
Right, one of them's in.
Down below? I can't! How do I go down? There's things! The stairs. Okay.
Get in there, you shit!
Time expired.
Gold medal for you!
Op 4 failed their mission.
Operators used to become 2D textures to prevent clipping through walls, but this ended up leading to some really funny glitches. The 5 windows above garage on Old Chalet. These windows were the best way to counter the garage getting opened. It got to a point where attackers just waited out the C4 because everyone knew it was coming. And of course, this was when you could still throw Valkyrie cams outside. There used to be absolutely no censoring or repercussions for typing something vulgar in the chat. You can see more crazy things said in a few of Anthony Pitt's old videos. All of the other windows on Old Chalet. But these were up on the balcony, and a place you'd always find a prime Blackbeard sitting. Those windows made it impossible to rotate by top fireplace or main lobby. In the E3 build of Siege, none of the outside windows or doors were automatically barricaded. You had to go around and close everything yourself. In the Siege Alpha, the old site selection screen used to look like a blueprint of the map, which was a pretty cool design. But I do think I prefer the current one. The heartbeat sensor in the closed alpha was blue, and it also showed the exact distance of the enemy. On Old Clubhouse, there were 2 hatches on the gym side of the building. One was in the middle of the logistics roof rather than the corner, and the other was right in the middle of the gym roof, making it one of the hardest sites to defend. IQ's old voice lines since Smynham, not sure if that's how you say your name, has been asking for multiple days in a row.
Okay, stay here. We'll be right back. Applying first aid. Bomb detected. Stay here and keep your head down. Vic, run!
It might be hard to notice this one, but screen shaking. This was a bigger change than people might realize, but screen shaking could really throw off your aim. Now you can just turn it off. On Old Oregon, bunker was way smaller. Elbow was not a thing, so obviously there was only one wall that could be opened. The actual bunker itself was about half the size of the current one, and there were no barrels outside to head glitch on since it was a single door. Really easy for Old Mira to hold. This was the original motion capture for putting up a barricade. This was the original animation for ripping down a barricade. And this was the original reinforcing a hatch animation. The old fridge glitch on House. Similar to the other glitches with the shield and barricade, except this would push you sideways into the fridge. Shout out to VicBoozo4 from my Discord for the clip. Back when Bartlett University was in multiplayer, there was a secure area site that was 2 floors. So naturally, this led to some very long standoffs, especially in ranked. Obviously, the high ground had the advantage, but shout out to Believing His Art from my Discord for the clip. One of the first ever holiday-related skins for Siege was this Christmas sweater that came out all the way back in 2015. And shout out to Odd from my Discord for the screenshot. On the test server a while back, they tested what it would be like to have the rooftop hatches automatically reinforced. I guess they didn't like it since it never made it past the test server. The lighting of Old Siege. Looking outside as a defender was like staring right into the sun, and looking into a building as an attacker was like looking into a void of darkness. The wobbling victory screen glitch. Not sure if something triggered this in-game or if it was just random, but the victory screen would just wobble around outside of the map somewhere. And shout out to Froppy from my Discord for the clip. The operator selection screen in the closed alpha. This is honestly something that stayed relatively the same, but it's crazy to see how many operators there were compared to now. In the alpha and beta, instead of the teams just being your team and opponents, It was Raven Shield and Rogue Spear. These are cool names, and I'm not sure why they changed it up. In the closed beta, when you were on the cameras, the sounds of explosions and shots popping sounded much more realistic and actually sounded really good. A lot more echoing and heavy sounds. In the Siege closed beta, the holographic sight was really zoomed in, almost like an ACOG. On Old Chalet, instead of an enclosed solarium, there was an outside balcony that led into the master bedroom. This made master bedroom very difficult to hold as a defender because there was almost nowhere to sit. Twitch's old drone went through a lot of changes, and I've covered most of them. But I didn't cover that her old drone had a pretty low vertical limit, meaning you could only look up a certain amount before it stopped you. On the loading screen for Yacht, there used to be a random recruit just standing there out on the ice. It was pretty funny, and they honestly should have left him there. In the E3 build of Siege, the door in the garage on House with all the debris and random things that were piled up was fully open. This is the door I'm talking about, but now it's completely gone on New House. A great way to get points back in the day was to spam Vigil's ability when there were a bunch of drones around. This would send you right to the top of the leaderboard to steal MVP, almost as good as constantly scanning enemies on a camera. The Apocalypse event. This was a fun change of pace, but a bit forgettable, but it did have a few cool skins. When Siege first came out, everyone thought Bolo was a cheater. Then a couple years later, Bolo ended up on a team with some of the pros that called him a cheater.
Blowo is not, this kid's not legit.
On Old Oregon, if you opened up the E-box wall, you could see all the way into laundry, while you were all the way back at the tower stairs, since the shelves that are there now blocking that line of sight were open. There used to be a glitch where you couldn't reload any of your weapons. This is another glitch that would just randomly happen and was unbelievably frustrating.
I can't reload.
On Old Border, since the back wall and archives was moved up a lot more, when you got up on the desk, you could see over into Office. You could also vault over the top part if you looked at it from the right angle. Of course, another glitch using the deployable shield and barricade, but this one was on Old Hereford. This one would drop you into a spot that would have you outside but not detected and let you see a lot of key spots on the map. This weird Sledge Elite glitch in the victory screen was honestly hilarious. The old favela theme. It just reminds me of a cool summer night when Skull Rain first dropped. Just hearing those fireworks and the noises of favela was the best, and I do miss it. Back when Echo first came out, he was the only one that had access to his drone, meaning no other defender could use his drone as a camera. This was also before bulletproof cameras were a thing too, so defenders only had access to defaults and Valkyrie cams. Back on Old Skyscraper, the geisha hatch was in the middle of the room, rather than behind the wall closer to Drum. If this got opened, it made it very hard for the defenders to hold Kitchen, hiding under the desk in the front office on Bartlett University. Doing this paired with the nighttime version of the map made you impossible to see, and this was a high traffic area, so you were most likely going to see at least one guy. The window on Old House with the slits in it that would let you see into a good amount of the top floor hallway and a couple of the rooms. You could put a claymore in the victory screen, and it would kill whoever was standing there. This was honestly hilarious. The fire camo. You could only get this camo if you played the Siege beta, and I do have this, but I don't even use it anymore. But it's not available on the R6 marketplace, so I'd say it's pretty rare. The kitchen and Mission Barbecue site were a lot different. Both of the rooms weren't connected with a door like it is now, and there was also no cover in the pantry. It was crucial for someone to hold that geisha hatch since it was in the middle of the kitchen, and Mission Barbecue had a window in the back middle of the room. And the kitchen had a wooden wall that could be opened. When they first changed the pistol recoil, they didn't move at all, and this finally made the Desert Eagle a viable secondary. Attackers used to only have one claymore, so you had to use it wisely with your placement. And as you can see in this clip, Thermite used to have claymores, which was kinda nice. On Old Chalet, there was no closet and bar that connected it to games. And there was a hatch behind the bar that once again was very crucial to keep closed. There was also a wall where the door next to main stairs currently is. You used to be able to set off Goyo's canisters in the MVP screen. I think this would be cool if they brought this back for an elite skin outro. The Bartlett University camo. You got this from beating Article 5, which is sadly no longer in the game. As of right now, you can't get it on the R6 marketplace, and I don't think there's any other way to get it. When you had to shoot the speaker on Old Border so you wouldn't constantly hear the guy going, "Do not attempt to board the helicopter." It's still in the game, but only during the prep phase. On Old Chalet, one of the bomb sites used to be Kitchen and Trophy. This was before Solarium was a thing, so there were no stairs in Trophy. just 2 windows and the split doorway, which is still there. Another thing about the old trophy room and bomb site was on the side where the window no longer is. That part of Chalet couldn't be rappelled on by attackers, but you still had to watch out because attackers could still hold a crazy angle all the way outside to see in. There was an unreleased Thatcher Elite skin called Number 8 Commando. It's pretty cool, and I'm not sure why it never got released. It even has a fully animated MVP victory screen. Recruit used to have more secondary gadgets than any other operator. 4 flashbangs, 4 breach charges, and the craziest one of them all, 4 frags. They should have brought this back with the Recruit rework. The helicopter that used to fly around border. There's still a helicopter that flies around on current border, but it's much higher up and is way quieter. But that's why the guy on the speaker would be saying, "Do not attempt to board the helicopter." There was actually another group of enemies that appeared that weren't the White Mask Gang. They were in 3 situations and used in a couple cinematics, but no clue if they have an official name. This was a really small thing, but Twitch couldn't go prone while she was throwing her drone. The bodies that were all over the place when you played Article 5. Just another subtle detail that was pretty cool and isn't on any other map. They would also bleed when you shot them, but that got removed. There was a scrapped canister game mode that ended up getting used for the Apocalypse event. There's full-on animations for it, and here are some of the announcer voice lines.
Be advised, canister location has been compromised. Keep the canister in your possession. Pick up the canister to avoid mission failure.
The Glacier camo was actually planned to be released for Blackbeard and Valkyrie, but ended up getting scrapped. You can still find the placeholder for it in the Dustline version of Siege. However, you can't actually see what it looks like on their weapons. And once again, massive shout out to Varsity Reviews from my Discord for both the Glacier and canister clips. Another glitch spot, of course, using the deployable shield and barricade once again. This one dropped you right on the grates that were hanging off of the ceiling on the 2nd floor on Old Hereford base. This was what the old camera UI looked like in the closed alpha. Everything was in the center, but there was no compass. It also said support mode in the top left. Idris Elba was in a bunch of live-action Siege trailers. This is also where they got the Castle Elite design from. All the trailers are still up on YouTube from around 8 years ago. Back when T-Hunt was in the game and had bombers, you were able to go in with a Twitch drone and disable the bomber's bomb. You can also see the Twitch drone UI is much different. Just a tiny cross in the middle and 2 boxes. Bartlett University was one of the first maps to get reworked for multiplayer. You can notice a major difference right away when you go through the front door with the stairs being removed, as well as the library having no stairs, just a ladder on the bookshelves. These are some of the original concept arts for Doka B. It would be cool if they added some of these in as other skins options in alpha packs, although they'd never see the light of day since she's banned all the time. Operators used to talk to themselves and make call-outs to no one in old T-Hunt and multiplayer, which was later taken out. But this used to give your position away since enemies could hear the voice lines. Not only could you set off Goyo shields, but you could throw smoke canisters and cover the whole screen in smoke. This cutscene that would play for Stadium Alpha.
Though careful placement of the magnet is a priority.
And of course, shout out to Varsity Reviews for the clip. As seen in the Goat Tio's video, when you got revived by Doc's stim pistol, if you were sprinting, you could start moving really fast while you were downed. You would just slide, and it looked really funny from both perspectives. In the closed alpha, Thatcher's EMP didn't have any animation when going off, it just disappeared. You used to be able to get on top of Presidential Plane. You just had to go outside of the cockpit door and sprint up the side of the plane until you got a vault prompt. It was better for the attackers since you could clear out anyone in the cockpit. You used to be able to get inside the wardrobe on Coastline in the penthouse. You just had to knock out the side paneling and wiggle your way in there. Another glitch, of course, using the old deployable shield, but this one was climbing up on the lockers on border. This was a really good spot since you could see the archives door, especially with an ACOG. As seen in the Goat Macie Jay's clip, not only would you hit the diffuser to disable it, but the diffuser didn't spark when you were disabling it. So like in this clip, you could easily diffuse through the wall. All the windows in the main lobby of Bank were open, making this a perfect spot for Glaz or Callie to sit. But this also made defending the top floor a nightmare with almost nowhere to sit on site. On Old Canal, you used to be able to get up onto this boat just by vaulting over the railing. This let you see right into kayaks. You could also drop down into the water, but if you did this, you would be stuck like Chuck. Another glitch on Old Canal was getting inside the van in the garage outside. You were able to shoot out of it while you were in the van, but no one could shoot in. When Siege first launched, You weren't able to change your attachments in between rounds. You could only do this at the main menu. But you could at least swap weapons and secondary gadgets during the game. And shout out to Holly the Beast from my Discord for the screenshot. The punch holes in the closed alpha were a lot bigger and a lot less detailed, as well as being more of a square shape. Ash had 3 breaching rounds instead of 2 for a small amount of time. Pulse and Hibana used to date and is the reason Pulse sold the 1v5 in one of the first tournaments.
Sorry, babe.
Attackers win.
They used to put out gameplay trailers showcasing the new operators and their abilities, which I thought were pretty cool, and gave a nice sneak peek at what's to come for the new season. Another part of Bartlett University that got changed was the piano room. There was a set of stairs added in to help with the flow of the map, and of course the upstairs rowing museum was changed too, since that's where the new stairs led to. And of course, shout out to Varsity Reviews for the gameplay. They were going to add in a sound when you would yellow ping on drones or cameras, but it never made it past the test server. This is what it sounded like. This was the original hostage in the Siege E3 trailer. It's kinda crazy how that whole trailer was a lie. The old alpha pack colors. There used to be 5 rarity types of alpha packs. The 2 that changed are common and uncommon. The common packs don't exist anymore, which used to be a dark gray, and all of those items got moved into the uncommon packs, which used to be a light gray, which are now green. Glaz's original scope in the T-Hunt launch trailer all the way back in 2015. Thankfully, this is not what released because it takes up 90% of the screen. When the actual Season Black Ice came out, you were able to just straight up buy the Black Ice and Glacier camo. You could either buy it for individual weapons, or you could buy it for factions, which is actually still shown on the Siege website with the date it was released, March 29th, 2016. This little white mask logo that would appear when you were defending on T-Hunt. I guess the defenders were intended to be the enemies. But once again, shout out to Varsity Reviews for the clip. There was a game-breaking glitch with Pulse in the closed alpha that let you see where the enemies were at all times with your weapons out. The thermite charge sounded a lot different, more of a heavy sound. The original punch holes on a wooden wall were much bigger in the closed alpha, almost like an Aruni-sized punch hole. Another thing in the closed alpha was Twitch's drone did 15 damage, so you could have taken someone out in about 7 shocks. On Old Canal, there was a guy trapped in one of the shipping containers, and if you hit it with an ash charge, you'd hear this. Or you'd hear the guy scream like this. A really strange Easter egg, if that's what you want to call it, was meleeing this toy caused it to grow. No idea why they added this one in, but it's kind of funny. Some of the paintings on Bartlett University were of other Siege maps. There's Chalet, Border, and Old Consulate. In the Old Canal basement, there used to be a magazine and a box of tissues in the stall. I wonder what was in that magazine. When Amaru first came out, she would break the window as soon as she hooked onto it, so it was way easier for defenders to hear. She also had to pre-break hatches before going up one, as well as being the only attacker who could get into the trophy window on the west side of Old Chalet. On Old Skyscraper, using the old deployable shield, of course, and a friend, you could get under the main stairs. It was really easy to do, and you could also shoot out of it, but no one could shoot in. There are 8 known cut operators from Siege. Shout out to Varsity Reviews for letting me use the YouTube video he made on them, which you should check out if you want more details on them. But their names were Pointman, Assaulter, Breacher, Sentry, which is interesting, that's going to be the new ops name, Protector, Trapper, Patcher, and Flubber. We actually did end up getting Patcher, who is now a zombie, and I'm guessing Flubber was based off of the 1997 movie with Robin Williams, because the description of the op involved a green goo. This was the old reinforcement animation in the closed alpha, and also the hatches were double the size but only on house for some reason. In the E3 build of Siege, you could run outside as a defender without getting detected. It's crazy how they went from no detection at all to what we have currently, which is 1 second. I mentioned in a previous TikTok about the 8 cut operators. Well, it turns out some of those cut operators were from the E3 build of Siege, as you can see in this loadout selection screen. So the cut ops probably are versions of the original ops that got released with Vanilla Siege. There's really not too much known about this next one, but the cut Polish map that was called Distillery. Some developers talked about it and said if they were to ever release this map, it would not be the same one that they had created for the Polish season. Hopefully it gets added in some way in the future. This is what the original map selection screen looked like in the closed alpha. No pick and bans, just thrown right into it. This is what it looked like when you got EMP'd in the Siege closed alpha. It made the heartbeat sensor a useless window, which is kind of funny looking. In the Siege closed alpha, you were able to pick up weapons off of eliminated ops. You can see the ammo counter increase every time Varsity Reviews picks a new one up. On Old Cafe, you could hide inside the little cocktail bar table. You just had to knock out a little bit of the side paneling and maneuver your way in there. Paired with the old lighting, this was another great spot for Prime Cav. The sound of lighting up a corpse sounded pretty gross in the closed alpha. Once again, got to shout out Varsity Reviews for the closed alpha clip. On Old Canal, there was no upper bridge connecting the two buildings together. There were, however, 8,000 windows in the control room, great for attackers to sit, and there was only one bridge that connected both buildings, meaning defenders had very limited flanking routes. I know I've covered Valk cams being able to be thrown outside before, but this was just a funny clip of mine I found from a couple years ago. In the Siege beta, you could place a cluster charge on a barricade while someone was breaking it, leaving the cluster charge there. It would still work too, and it was pretty funny looking, just floating in the air. Back in the day when the last two people would trade, instead of giving the round to defenders, you would get a draw and each team would get a point. This was the only time you'd see a loss that was 3-4 as seen in the GOAT Serenity 17's video. This old Monty victory pose glitch where he was holding an invisible shield, as seen in the GOAT Anthony Pitt's The Hipfire God video. Ubisoft was originally going to censor a lot of things in Siege for China for all players around the world, but ended up not doing this to everyone, and instead just for the China version of Siege. The Sugar Fright map was actually based off of a map called Street that has been in previous Rainbow Six entries. Here's some old gameplay of it from Rainbow Six Vegas 2. Another thing about the Sugar Fright event was that the NA version of the trailer was censored, but the UK version wasn't. Here's the NA one.
Trick or treat,
Here's the UK version, which I think is better.
Trick or treat, motherfucker!
This is what the Nitro Cell originally looked like in the E3 build of Siege. I like this design, but I do like what we have now as well. This is some of the original concept art for Vigil. It's interesting to see because they clearly like the design on the right since we ended up getting that for Nuck. Like other concept arts, it would be really cool for them to add in these as alternate skins. The gold camo. It's one of the oldest camos in the game, but it looks really clean. I still use it on my Deagle. But the way you got this was from a code from buying the actual Siege disc, which I still have sitting right next to me. It's currently not on the R6 marketplace, but I'd assume it'll get added at some point. Another very old camo is Peacock. I believe you got this from playing the closed alpha or beta, and I think it's pretty rare. It doesn't really look that good, but isn't on the R6 marketplace, so it's cool to have. On Old Oregon, there was a drone hole that went into Dining Hall, which was a really horrendous sight to defend. And this drone hole prevented anyone from sitting and watching one of the most crucial doors that attackers would push in from. There used to be no team reverse friendly fire back in the day, so everyone could get in on the action, or you could get revenge for your man's pots and pans. The old Deagle recoil used to be crazy, but the revolver was a close second with how bad it was. After that first shot, you had to wait for that revolver to come back down from the recoil so you could see. The revolver recoil for Monty was much more manageable though, and this was of course when you could hip fire across the map with it. You used to be able to trap people in between a reinforcement and a wall, if the person was trying to reinforce the wall at the same time as you. They'd end up getting squished, which was pretty funny. Another under the map glitch, with who would have guessed it, the old deployable shield. This one was on bank and would drop you into the cracks of time, letting you watch the hallway and tellers. I've talked about how bad the servers used to be back in the day before, but another thing that could happen was getting stuck in an infinite loading screen in between rounds, and the only way out was for everyone to dashboard. So both teams had to take the loss. The servers can be bad in current Siege, but they are much better than the old servers. Recruit had an entirely different model made just for Outbreak. I don't think we've ever seen this skin return for anything else. Putting up barricades, ripping them down and reinforcing used to be much faster in the Outbreak event. It looks pretty goofy since it's just the normal animation sped up. And also, the reinforcements were yellow instead of red. The original animation for getting launched actually came from the Outbreak event. As you can see, they ended up reusing this for Nomad's air jab, who wasn't out at the time of Outbreak. There are also other recruits who didn't survive the Outbreak attacks lying around. You can see they used the same new model they made for Outbreak. Ash's breaching round in Outbreak would instantly go off. Could you imagine if this made its way into multiplayer? Ash mains would be flying around the map even more than they already do. There were also a lot of new animations used for Outbreak that I don't think have ever appeared in other events or in multiplayer. You could open and close doors as well as push buttons around the map. And of course, massive shout out to Varsity Reviews for all the Outbreak clips. The brawlers were basically an early version of Oryx, since they could dash, run through walls, and knock you over. Doc's stim pistol used to not heal teammates. It was only used for reviving. If you hit a teammate that was up, they would scream in pain. There was a cut warm-up mode in Year 1 that of course got added in much later down the line, but you could still find it in the files, and it's somewhat playable on old versions of Siege with mods. Castle used to only have 3 barricades. However, it took 12 hits to knock one of them down. I think the amount of hits changed a few times throughout the years, but now it's 4 barricades that take 9 hits. You used to need to hold down whatever button you used for the heartbeat sensor to keep it out. This led to a lot of tragedies swapping back and forth by accident. The old crouch animation looked different, a bit more realistic, and bodies used to ragdoll a lot more, and of course they would stay there after. The White Mask Gang used to have their own type of shield. This was later changed to Fuse's shield for some unknown reason. I liked the old design better since it gave the White Masks a more unique feel, but sadly they are gone entirely. Massive shout out to Varsity Reviews for all these clips as per usual. In T-Hunt, you used to be able to shoot your teammates in the head, and they'd survive it. I believe this only happened on the normal and hard difficulty though. Operators used to interact with each other in T-Hunt.
Once this is all over, it's your shout, mate.
Just don't play hero. It never works.
Let's watch each other's backs out there.
You remind me of my brother.
Don't touch my stuff.
Am I going to need to save all your asses again?
They would also call out when enemies were reloading.
Enemy reloading. They're out! Enemy changing mags!
This isn't that old, but when the AI training first came out, it was really easy to break the AI. As you can see, breaking this wall used to confuse the AI, and it was pretty funny seeing the bot just walk around cluelessly. This is what Thermite's elite animation looked like in Article 5. Cheaters used to be able to shoot Maverick holes with a normal weapon, so you weren't even safe in a locked room. The reinforcements used to be a little bit bigger at launch, except for a few different rooms where they are extra skinny, like on plane. For some reason at the start of the round, the hostage would fall over when spawning in. In old launch trailers, you can see attackers and defenders working together, which never made it into the game. And for some reason, Thermite is breaking out instead of breaking into house. Another thing cheaters could do was run around with Hibana's X-Kairos as a fully automatic weapon. Of course, pairing it with aimbot made them unstoppable. When Macie first came out, he had the Super Shorty. This was also before the 1.5 was a thing, so people didn't just pick Macie for the Ronnie. They would actually use his gadget, believe it or not. Bandit batteries used to destroy other defenders' gadgets, some examples being a C4, Legion's goo mine, Valkyrie cams, and like in this clip, mute jammers. This is definitely something I don't miss. The Macie pizza skin. I know you can get this on the R6 marketplace now, but for a while this was a pretty rare skin. It was a Twitch Prime reward that came with 4 parts to the set, being the headgear, uniform, commando skin, and charm. One of my favorite skins to this day. On Coastline back in the day, vaulting over the Sunrise bar could get you stuck like Chuck, and then you'd fall out of the map. So basically, hopping over that bar was not a good idea, especially with bad ping. On Presidential Plane, back when you could throw Valkyrie cameras outside, you used to be able to throw one on the tail of the plane, giving you a crazy point farm. Breach charges used to light up for different surfaces. Green was for barricades, soft walls, and hatches which would be totally destroyed. Yellow was floors or walls with metal railings that would be partially destroyed. Red was for indestructible or reinforced walls. Smoke's canister used to have orange tape wrapped around it, and for some reason they changed it to yellow. Not sure why they did this one, if it had to do with the lore or something along those lines. The wooden barricade on Yacht used to be instantly destroyed with one quick melee hit, whereas now it takes a few hits to break in. The ship also used to be called Boreal, but was changed to Aklark for some unknown reason. For whatever reason, the bar freezer on old Cafe Dostoyevsky didn't have a name next to it on the compass. but this was also an iconic spot to hide with the hostage. Massive shout out to Heretic117 who commented a lot of these things on my YouTube video. Cheaters used to be able to dual wield a shield and AK. I'm honestly surprised we haven't seen any dual wield operators yet. It would be cool to see that. There used to be a hatch in what's called the bar back store, which I honestly didn't know it was called that dropped down into reading right next to the red hall door. How easy it was to take the kid's bedroom as an attacker, especially if it was reinforced. Windows on 3 sides of the bedroom for attackers to sit. There was almost no chance of retaking it as a defender. On Old Oregon next to the construction spawn, you used to be able to peek through the cracks of time under the wood paneling into either tower or all the way into garage. It was nearly impossible to win a gunfight against anyone using this, defending the garage on Old Canal. For some reason, this didn't count as going outside, so it was a great place to catch attackers off guard, either if they were going up the main stairs or if they were trying to attack kayaks. On Old Theme Park, you used to be able to run out of control room onto the roof to reinforce the hatch, but sometimes this was a mission you wouldn't come back from. Another kind of funny cheat was Sledge going invisible and chasing people around with his big sledgehammer that he hides in his pants. He was trying to pound everyone with that hammer. On Old Skyscraper, there used to be stairs that went to the top of the exterior tower that would give you some really good angles into Exhibition and the main door next to T. You just needed to do a little bit of parkour to get up there. How deadly the deployable shield and Old Tachanka turret were. If you rounded a corner and saw this, you were dead meat, James. The only counter to this was if you could break the shield attached to the turret without being spotted. For whatever reason, the only footprints Jackal could see in T-Hunt were the bombers. Jackal's ability picture at the bottom also changed from his logo to a footprint, because we all know Jackal loves feet. And of course, shout out Varsity Reviews for the clip. On Old Outback, you could have the world's longest angle all the way into Party from Yellow Stairs. You can do something similar on current Outback, but it's not as good as this one was. This isn't really Old Siege, but kind of a random fact. Bank doesn't have a bathroom anywhere, and it's always been like that. On Old Cafe, it was really easy to run out on the people that spawned in the park, since they were all bunched up in one spot with no cover. How easy it was to break out the wall on bottom white stairs, or the actual name Storage, which I've honestly never called it that. But you didn't even need a shoddy or impact to open this wall. Even a pistol got the job done. Every operator that has an elite skin has a unique camo for all the weapons in their inventory, but since Sledge lost his SMG-11, the camo called Ferrum was taken away from all SMG-11s. Gotta shout out Varsity Reviews for the clip. In one of the Siege launch trailers with Idris Ilba, there was a kitten that was named Clancy the Tomcat, an obvious reference to Tom Clancy. On the old Hereford situation, you could actually shimmy under the railing that was blocked off. There was no point in doing this since you'd be stuck like Chuck once you were down there unless you wanted to explore. And shout out to T3 Musketeers JTL from my Discord for the clip. In one of the in-game screenshots before Siege launched, you could see Bandit holding an MP5. There was a pretty rare glitch that I've only seen like once or twice where impacts could bounce off of something, usually glass, and could sometimes lead to tragedies. The invisible wall glitch. If you knocked out a majority of the wall, then shot the rest out with a pistol, the wall would go invisible instead of collapsing. As you can see, you can't run through or hit it, but shooting the wall next to it would fix it. Another glitch with the deployable shield, of course, but this one was on plane. Once you maneuvered your way into the floor, it would drop you all the way to the bottom of the plane. You could go from the front to the back of the plane while seeing the entire bottom floor and all of outside. A Valkyrie cam glitch on Old Oregon. If you shot out this corner and threw the cam into the cracks of time, you'd be able to see some of Small Tower as well as the hallway and dining. Gotta mention the iconic Moist Critical Miss input clip. This was an all-time classic.
Stop fucking shooting me! What the fuck is wrong with you? Chill!
It was a misinput! Calm down! You calm the fuck down! There was a misinput!
Oh my fucking god.
This was my TikTok from when I made it to 100 episodes of Old Siege, so these next few clips are some of my favorite moments. Being able to throw Valkyrie cameras outside. It was kind of broken, but that's what made it fun, especially hopping out on unsuspecting enemies. Tachanka's old LMG. It was fun to set up behind a shield and try and lock down an area, and to hear this quote was the best.
LMG! Mounted and loaded!
5-man recruit shield. It's a damn shame that it didn't return with the new recruit. Pulling up on the defenders with 5 shields was so much fun. Not only was recruit shield fun, but recruit rush. I miss this too, especially in ranked. Throwing grenades back. I'm really not sure why they ever took this one out. It was very hard to do, but super satisfying if pulled off. Can't forget about night maps. I'd really love to see these return, but there's no way these ever make their way back into ranked. But maybe casual. The unique title screens for each season were so cool. Ubisoft was originally going to censor all versions of Siege for China, and this is what Cav was going to look like. I can see why she wears that face paint. There was a glitch where if you were really quick with extending and retracting Monty's shield, you could shoot with his pistol out while you were extending his shield, since the ADS time with shields were much faster. I've covered one of the yacht glitches before, but this one was a little bit different from the other one. Similar concept though, you'd run into the snow and be under the snow pile. The only way the enemy could get you was by following you in there. But you could pop up and shoot anyone waiting there. I know this is still a thing, but the peak from Red Hatch on Old Cafe that let you see into Christmas was much wider, so you could see a little bit more. But shout out Poppy Slops for sending me the yacht, Monty and Cafe clips. On Old Consulate, you used to be able to climb on top of the vending machine in Visa office. Pretty good spot for defenders, although I think this was patched before Vigil came out. Another little spot on Old Consulate was climbing on the shelf in Tellers, although this wasn't as good as the vending machine one. There was a glitch in Doctor's Curse where you could spawn in as recruit. He had his full loadout and everything, so he was able to shoot the attackers running in. On Old Consulate, you used to be able to get into the van. Of course it was using the old deployable shield too, but once you were in, you were nearly invincible, and you could shoot out of it in any direction. And getting out was super easy, just vault out the back. On Chalet, you used to be able to throw a Valkyrie camera in the rock outside of the garage. Once it was in here, it couldn't be spotted, and I don't think it could be destroyed either, but I'm not 100% sure. On Clubhouse in the tunnel, you used to be able to clip through the wall, which would let you see anyone creeping like the creep man in the tunnel. You could also see outside of the kitchen a little bit if you maneuvered a different way. On Old Consulate, using the deployable shield once again, you could climb on top of the vending machines in the second floor hallway. It wasn't the best spot though. You were pretty exposed. Another hop-up spot on Old Consulate, with, you guessed it, the deployable shield. This one was the break room on top of the fridge, which was a great spot for secure area, since admin office was a prime site. I might have covered this before, but it's worth showing off again, where you could play as multiple of the same operators. Seeing more than one blitz is terrifying. On certain walls, you could stack mirror windows on top of each other. This was pretty overpowered, since the only counter to this was a Twitch drone popping out the other window. The old glitch where you could phase through the wall, this one was insane. You would place a breach charge down, rappel, then you'd get off rappel and pick up the breach charge at the same time. Once you did that, your weapon would disappear. You'd then rappel up on a separate wall and open the window enough to be able to swing in. Once you would swing in, you spammed the detonate button and it would launch you up to another floor, right through a wall. You used to be able to get on top of the truck in the garage on Bank. This wasn't really that useful since you would end up in the ceiling and couldn't see any of the garage, but you could see parts of open area and the white stairs. Another kind of useless glitch on Bank was getting in the wall out on the roof. If you rappelled down while holding the hostage, you'd end up in the wall. There was a glitch where you could put two mirrors on opposite sides of a barricade, and of course using the most broken item in Siege history, the deployable shield, you could block the doorway completely. The pre-release MPX was supposed to be stronger, but got toned down for release. It also sounded different. Take a listen. Also, Valkyrie was supposed to release with 5 cameras instead of 4, which would have been very overpowered. Pre-release Oryx had an ACOG scope on his MP5, and obviously this was before the Oryx and Malusi loadout swap was an idea. But shout out to Lungu from my Discord for the Valk and Oryx stuff. This was the very first loading screen for the beta of Siege. You might recognize the music since it's the original Siege theme I always use in the background. But shout out to Slimemaster5208 from my Discord for this beta clip. You used to be able to duplicate Tachanka's turrets. I'm pretty sure there was no limit to how many you could put down, but it was pretty cool to see like 10 turrets all mounted and loaded. On Old Chalet, you used to be able to climb into the tree at the campfire spawn. You just had to maneuver your way up, and then you had a great angle into master bedroom. You could also drop down safely once you were done. On Old House, using a deployable shield and a friend, you could phase into the wall. You'd be stuck like Chuck, but anyone who spawned on the garage side were dead meat James as soon as they walked up to the house. On Old Oregon, you used to be able to climb into the RV that was outside. You needed a deployable shield, so it was insanely risky and not worth it to do as a defender, especially since the attackers could leave you in there and go to the objective. On Old Clubhouse, you used to be able to climb onto the roof as a defender. You just needed to vault the side of the roof at the right angle. Then you could climb up top and reinforce both hatches, which were pretty important to keep closed. On Old Border, you could break these computers, then put a claymore on the desk so the laser would be sticking out and would smoke anyone walking by. The claymore was also really hard to destroy since it was behind concrete. There was a glitch where you could place a thermite charge anywhere on the map, but you would glitch out and glide around the map, which was pretty funny looking. On Yacht, you used to be able to vault through the slot machines and wall using the old deployable shield. Since Valkyrie used to have a deployable shield, you could have a hidden camera in the hallway and pop out on unsuspecting enemies. The sideways screen glitch. If you rappelled upside down, through a drone, then got off rappel and started turning your drone at the same time, you'd be stuck leaning sideways. There was really no point in doing this one except for fun, but the way you got out of it was by rappelling again. On certain maps that had walls connected to the inside and outside of the map, if you opened up part of the wall and then reinforced it, you could actually stay outside as a defender without being detected, since you were tucked away in the cracks of time. On Bank, you used to be able to get your drone in the basement ceiling. You just needed to do some parkour around the gold bars in the vault and then hop in the ceiling, where you could see a lot of the basement while your drone was hidden. The T-Hunt bombers used to be absolute tanks. It took 3 melee hits just to take one of them down, which was probably not possible to pull off without a glitch. There was a weird animation that was only in T-Hunt, I believe, where the guy would put his shield on his back, and if you meleeed it, you would get this animation where the shield would swing out, just like they would when they are in the front. Not sure if this is still in the game or not, but Goya would or still does call out Amaru when she is scanned.
Amaru, first floor. Amaru spotted. Amaru located. Tagging Amaru, first floor. Amaru in sight, first floor.
Operators used to call out actual room names in T-Hunt. This is just a cool detail. Operators call out things quietly if they have a suppressor on.
Loading mag.
Operators used to call out if there was a frag grenade close by in T-Hunt. This is an old mod where you could fuse Ella, Tachanka, and Thermite together. This was pretty funny, and I wonder what other combos are out there. Shout out to Cyrilix from my Discord for that first clip. But in Rainbow is Magic, the map was actually set in the kid's bedroom on Old House, and all the cars on the map as well as the plane were toys. Some more things about Rainbow is Magic where the walls and barricades had their own special coloring for this mode, as well as the wall having a cool animation where a plane flies around on it. You could also hit the flowers on the wall and they'd lose all their petals and cry. So sad. There was also a hidden teddy bear in this present if you meleeed it open, as well as the what I think is supposed to be Kraken from the kid's bedroom in this present. Another random thing in Rainbow is Magic is if you smoke the bear, in the replay the bear would have really glitched out arms. In T-Hunt, the white masks could actually run out of ammo. They would just end up standing around and make call-outs because that's all they could do. There was an old glitch. When you went to reinforce the wall, your operator would just pass out. This was absolutely hilarious, and I have no idea what would happen after this. Shout out to Cyrilix from my Discord for that reinforcement clip. But back when Smoke had SMG-11 ACOG, he was able to throw his smoke canister while aimed down sights. Not sure how he was throwing it with both hands on his weapon. Could have been his third leg. You used to be able to detect enemies just by looking at them. Whether it was on a drone or staring down the barrel of someone's weapon, you didn't need to scan them. For whatever reason, Smoke would break his wrist when picking up his nitro cell, back when he had one, or smoke canister. I tried doing this myself and can't even turn my wrist that far without moving my arm. Hitting other players with gadgets used to do 5 damage like Mazie's pests or Nomad's air jabs. But another big shout out to Varsity Reviews for all the clips besides the first and last one you're about to see. Back on Old Favela, if you could even get here, you could throw a Valkyrie cam through this window, making it impossible to destroy. Ubisoft was originally going to let defenders do the attackers' jobs and vice versa. This can be done currently with mods on old builds of Siege. In this clip you can see Ash and Mute on the same team, They even interact with each other, which is pretty cool.
We're doing a bit more scrumping here.
I've got your back.
It was also planned for defenders to be able to be picked on Article 5, although this one is pretty buggy since the operators are invisible. But you can see smoke planting the diffuser. Here's another clip with an attacker and defender working together. This time it's Capcan and Dokkaebi.
Is this going to be long?
You do your job, I'll do mine.
In this clip, you can see Twitch reinforcing and barricading doors, as well as interacting with Mute.
Secure the area.
Let's watch each other's backs out there. You always say that.
Big shout out to Varsity Reviews for all the T-Hunt clips. There used to be a glitch where you could fly your drone. No clue what caused this, but it was pretty cool. And shout out to Cyrillix for this clip. There was a glitch where you could run straight up a wall like Spider-Man. I have no clue how this was even done, but it's pretty funny. Shout out to Snoozer from my Discord for that first clip. But there was an old Monty glitch on Bank where you could keep your shield extended while crouched. As far as I know, this only worked on Bank. You just needed to extend your shield under the garage door, fully protecting you while crouched. Paired with old Blackbeard, you were unstoppable. On old Clubhouse, you could throw a Valkyrie camera into the wall above the bar. Once it was in here, it was nearly impossible to spot, although it could be destroyed if you could find it with IQ at the right angle. Another Valkyrie camera glitch, but this one was on Bank. If you knocked out some of the floor in the executive lounge room upstairs and threw the camera on the beams, you could see through the floor, watching reception door. From downstairs, nothing could be seen, as well as the camera being indestructible from that angle. Another glitch with the deployable shield, although this one was with the new shield. If you put it next to a hatch and Oryx jumped up, he'd be stuck like Chuck, which is pretty funny looking to see him chilling there. On Coastline, back when service entrance was part of the site, you could actually plant at the door while it was barricaded, leaving the defense scrambling to find the diffuser. Shout out to Sky Boric for sending me that first clip. But this clip shows off the discontinued Capitao skin called the Capitao Detainee set. It's pretty cool since it goes along with the lore of how he lost his eye, and it would be nice to see it return. And this was sent to me by Terrence Peraza in my Discord. Ella was originally supposed to be blonde, as you can see in the early leak photos of Ella. Her face also looks a bit different compared to what we ended up getting. What do you think looks better, the blonde or the green hair? And once again, shout out to Sky Boric for sending the screenshots in my Discord. There was a glitch once again with the old deployable shield, this time on Clubhouse. Before shields mounted to the doorway, you could put it in the tunnel door, making it unable to be vaulted. Another spot with the deployable shield was in the kids' room. This one allowed you to climb up into the bunk bed, giving you a pretty decent angle looking at the hallway. And this was before attic was attached, so you didn't have to worry about it. There used to be a glitch where Oryx could send Fuse flying, if Fuse put down his cluster charge at the right moment. Once Oryx hit him, Fuse would be stuck like Chuck in a standing position after he got hit. Warden actually had a full-on design for Article 5. However, the only way it can be accessed now is through mods on old builds of Siege. But his glasses didn't work the same. Instead of seeing clear in the smoke, the enemies are highlighted. Which is pretty cool, but also strange they did this for something that never got released. And of course, shout out to Varsity Reviews for the clip. Another Article 5 thing from Varsity Reviews is that Macie had his own special hazmat suit. He's a lot more decked out compared to other ops. This is a super early build of Siege. This kind of looks like an early build of Hereford, but it's really cool to see what Siege looked like before people even knew it was a thing. This might have been when it wasn't even Siege, and was actually Rainbow Six Patriots. But it's interesting to see that the logos used for the team are the Splinter Cell and the Assassin's Creed logos. I would guess just as placeholders. This is an early design of boarding up a door, pretty much the same thing as what we have all these years later, but still cool to see. Nomad's air jabs could sometimes glitch you through walls. And no, I'm not talking about soft walls. That's always been a thing and still is. I'm talking about solid walls and teleporting through like in this very clip. This was the early development of Sledge. It's interesting to see that he was just knocking out little pieces of a wall, rather than knocking out a huge section of a wall. And it also looks like they originally intended to have actual doors. It looks like barbed wire was going to cover a lot more of an area than it does now. And they just threw it rather than placing it down. The original deployable shield was honestly a more similar build to the current shield we have, rather than the old one, since there's a window you can see through. Barricades were interesting. Looks like they were going to have a little slit in them so you could peek out of the window. A spawn peeker's paradise. When Siege first came out, sometimes getting knocked would just randomly teleport you. No clue what even caused this, but once you got revived, you would be stuck like Chuck under the map. Another classic deployable shield glitch. This one was on Old Oregon in the kitchen pantry. This one let you glitch into one of those freezers that you open from the top. That way you could smoke anyone walking through the kitchen uncontested. There used to be a glitch where Caveira could instantly interrogate. It could very rarely happen when you were interrogating on stairs, but it was actually super helpful when it did. The weird deformed operator glitch. I really don't know what caused this one, but it was pretty funny, where your character model was all stretched out, and it kind of looked like they were being pulled by something from under the map. I think the hitboxes were still the same though. When Mira first came out, there was a pretty goofy looking bug when Mira placed down her window. She would kind of teleport out of the way looking backwards, then place the Mira window using telekinesis. The invisible frost mat glitch. This one required a sacrifice of Frost, but it was a small price to pay for a free injure. Frost had to pick up her mat, and as she started the animation, someone had to sacrifice her. The Frost mat would then be invisible and still fully functional. The shiny suppressor glitch. This one was annoying because it replaced your suppressor with the actual sun, and it would just happen randomly, making it nearly impossible to see anyone. I know I just showed this glitch, but here's another perspective of the Oryx and Fuse glitch. This whole video is a compilation of TikToks I made over the past few weeks, so some duplicates might sneak in. Ending up in a wall with Caveira. If you interrogated someone next to a wall or in a door frame, sometimes when you'd finish the animation, you'd end up in the wall. You were stuck like Chuck, and the only way out was if someone put you out of your misery. This next one is really cool. In the early build of Siege, there were plans to be able to barricade doors with whatever you could find laying around, like a chair or a bookshelf. Obviously, this never made it into any version of the game since Siege doesn't have doors, but this would have been a great feature for T-Hunt. There was even the idea of welding doors shut too, which would have been really interesting if you could totally block off entrances. This one was really interesting. It looks like the original intention was for certain floors to be completely destructible. We did see a version of this in the E3 trailer for Siege, and then of course in the Grand Larceny event, which they need to bring back. When Goyo had his shield, you could put up a barricade while attaching the shield to the doorway at the same time. This was a semi-useful glitch. This is the last thing you'd hear before a T-Hunt bomber went off. When you heard this, you knew you were dead meat, James. Back when Goyo still had shields, you could actually place a Maestro camera on one. You just had to maneuver around until you got the prompt to place the camera, then Goyo could take the shield away and the camera would be floating there. I know I just used this clip, but I also wanted to point out how part of Buck's AR iron sights would be sticking out no matter what sight you used. Thankfully, they took it away pretty early on. On Oregon, you used to be able to shoot Capitao bolts through the cracks of time out on the meeting hall roof. They would land right on the floor covering the tower wall and attic. It was semi-useful, usually no one really sits here, and Bandit usually doesn't trick this wall either. There was also a glitch where you could have unlimited Capitao bolts. I have no idea how this one was even accomplished, but I know it did exist. It was probably similar to the unlimited Tachanka turret or Doc Stim pistol glitch. There was a glitch that would randomly happen sometimes. When you threw your Twitch drone, it would get stuck like Chuck in the ground and then fall out of the map. There used to be a glitch where you could have a nearly fully automatic Twitch drone. I'm pretty sure this was also a thing cheaters could do. Here's a look at an unreleased skin for Sledge that was intended for Halloween of 2020. Shout out to Sky Boric from my Discord for the screenshots. But I'm not sure why they scrapped this one, and I think they should add it in at some point. It looks like in the early build of Siege, you were going to be able to throw breach charges, rather than place them down. This would have been really interesting if this made it into the game, and I'm wondering if this would have made Ashe obsolete, or if they would have changed her character altogether. Another thing from the early build of Siege was being able to take cover behind a shield. You can see a hand placed on the shield op's back, while the shield guy leads the way. The shield also breaks down the wall by running into it, which is interesting because you can also see this in the cover art of Siege. This looks like an early test of the destructible environment. It's kind of funny because it looks like someone's going to town on a random Ubisoft office, but it's interesting to see a brick wall being breachable, as well as being able to put holes in it. Looks like the original intention was to have everything be destructible, similar to Battlefield. There used to be a spawn peak on Old Cafe, where you could hop up on the windowsill by climbing on the presence, and then smoke anyone running up from the park spawn. For some reason, Grim had Ashe's voice lines in Article 5. Finka and Lion were the only operators to wear their regular uniform in Article 5, since they are basically wearing a version of a hazmat suit. However, Cade and Maestro could change the look of their hazmat suits depending on what uniform they had on. which was obviously a bug since you could only play as attackers. And using the unicorn headgear for Tachanka would just make his head invisible, which is pretty funny. Iana's clone used to wear a hazmat suit in Article 5 as well, which was a pretty cool detail. These are some unused voice lines for Macie and Hostage.
Secure the hostage. Follow me! Stay close! We need to move! Stay right here! I have the hostage. Follow me, now!
Nock was going to receive a buff that let her bypass a bunch of electronic gadgets, which I think is a great idea. To touch more on the Nock buff, a few examples of gadgets that she could walk through undetected were Kapkan traps, Ella's Grismot mines, proximity alarms, and metal detectors. I'm guessing if they were to add this into current Siege, it would also apply to Fenrir's FNAT traps and Thorn's Razor Bloom. I think this would be a great buff to Nock, since she's not in the best spot nowadays. And all the Nock gameplay was from Jaeger himself's video. On Old Cafe, there were 2 windows in the fireplace room, which leads into the next thing. If you opened up the left side window, then put a hole in the red hall wall and one in the bar backstore upstairs, you could see all the way through the cracks of time out into right outside the park spawn. In this very short clip from the early build of Siege, it looks like you could pull out your secondary when you went down. Thankfully, this did not make it into the game. I couldn't imagine how furious people would be losing a 1v1 to a downed guy. On Bank, if you knocked out the wall next to the elevators upstairs, you could drop down onto the loan office wall, walk all the way up to the window, and catch anyone walking towards garage. This was one of the very early designs of the drone. Seems like it's pretty much the same, except the camera's on top of the drone so you can see the actual parts of the drone. And it also looks a lot more wobbly, like banking a corner too fast, and it would flip over. On Old Hereford base, you could place a mirror window on the locker's wall that was by the basement entrance, pop open the mirror, and put a C4 in there. Since half of the wall on the outside was covered by concrete, the attackers couldn't hear the C4 beeping, so it was a free pick, usually on thermite. Another thing from the early build of Siege was sniper surveillance. Now this one is really interesting because it seemed like this made it all the way up to the E3 build of Siege. As you can see in the trailer, there's a sniper outside. Not sure if this was a very early build of Glaz or something entirely different. These were the original operator portraits for the early build of Siege. The names made it to the E3 build, but the only thing that made it to the release of Siege were the gadgets. One of the old victory poses was Mira holding up an L. I guess they got rid of these because of the elite skin animations, but I think they should return. There was an old bandit battery glitch to get an unlimited amount of them. All you needed to do was have Mute place down his jammer sideways next to a wall, then Bandit put down his battery on top of the jammer, while Mute picked it up. If you did it right, you'd have an extra battery and you could keep stacking them. There was also another Bandit glitch, where you could place down 1 battery for 2 walls, and this screenshot was sent to me by CX in my Discord. On Old Recruit, you couldn't have attachments on any weapons. No scopes, no grips, and nothing on the barrel. But this was also back when the recoil wasn't nearly as much, so you didn't really need them. In the early development of Siege, there was the idea of having a drone that would fly around the map and scan enemies. It's a cool idea, but if it was for attackers, it would be pretty useless, or if it was for defenders, it would be pretty overpowered. My guess is they just turned it into the defenders getting auto-detected when they go outside. But it did make it all the way up to the E3 build of Siege, as you can see in the trailer. There used to be a super speed fuse glitch that was absolutely hilarious. To elaborate on the fuse glitch a bit more, the way you do it was pretty ridiculous, and I'm not even sure how people figured it out. But you'd break the glass on the window, put down a breach charge, repel, flip upside down, start the swing animation, place your cluster charge down as you hit the window, and you'd get a glitchy animation. It would look normal on your screen, but to everyone else, you looked like the Flash and made yourself a hard target to hit. It was honestly really funny looking. There were more outcomes from this glitch though. Like one thing is you could fall out of the map until the rope ran out. Another outcome was your screen would go completely sideways. I don't know about you, but I could never play like this. I'd probably vomit everywhere, and it makes me dizzy just watching it. The last thing it could do was make you invincible if you were using Fuse's shield. You just had to put the shield on your back and hold out a cluster charge and you were straight up invincible. Back before Fuse could fuse reinforced walls, there was actually a glitch on Old House where you could. It was right out in the main hallway. This isn't Old Siege, but I'll be showing off a bunch of stuff created by Z-Min that he made a while back. This one is a Blackbeard rework concept where he would shoot a wire that would cut off angles, but you could vault or crawl under it. The T-Hunt bomber actually had a face model. which was pretty freaky looking to be honest. I can see why they keep that helmet on 24/7. This is Hibana's old voice versus her new one. Which one do you think is better?
As my friend would say, a really big fucking hole coming right up.
As my friend would say, a really big fucking hole coming right up.
That's my favorite part, just before the blaze.
That's my favorite part, just before the blaze.
Setting Trace's thermotouch.
Setting Trace's thermotouch.
On Old Cafe, you used to be able to climb on the railing on white stairs, open up the wall, and smoke anyone creeping like the creep man through the fireplace. Although if anyone walked up from anywhere else, you'd be dead meat James. Another great angle was on Old Chalet. If you made a hole in the floor in the master bedroom above the kitchen, you'd be able to peek through the cracks of time and get anyone peeking through the tiny window. There used to be an unlimited Capcan trap glitch similar to Doc's stim glitch, but the only thing I could find to show this was a photoshopped picture posted by Ubisoft. In one of the first Siege cinematics, we actually got a face reveal for 2 characters. The first one is Monty, which probably not a lot of people know, but I know this because there's a date on the right. It's December 26, 1994, that matches up with his biography, talking about a hijacking. The other one is Bandit. This one is a little more obvious since we ended up getting skins that showed what he looks like. But this was actually the first time he's ever showed his face on screen. Angela Bassett was the original 6, meaning she was in charge of Team Rainbow. Her in-game name was Aurelia Arnott, and she's the one that put Harry in charge. She fit the role well, and she also played a very similar role in Mission Impossible Fallout, one of my favorite movies. Another glitch with Capcan was being able to use his drill as one of your weapons. Well, kind of. It was more of a visual bug, but it was pretty funny. You needed 2 windows next to each other, place one trap down, and spam the deploy button while swiping over, and then you'd have the drill stuck in your hand. The old Oregon bunker used to be way smaller and much easier to spawn peek or chuck a C4 right into the enemy's lap. There used to be a glitch where you could climb up mirror windows. This one was on Old Chalet where you could climb up on the lights hanging down from the ceiling. Of course, the old deployable shield was involved too, but you'd hop over the shield onto the counter. Then Mira held out her window, and you'd vault over her. Same thing for this spot, but this was on Cafe in the bar backstore. This one let you hop up onto the shelves, which was great for hostage since this was the room you had to defend. On Old Bank in the lobby, back when this door was blocked off, you could actually hop up on a deployable shield. Big surprise, I know, and peek through the cracks of time getting anyone that walks through the main entrance. On Old Consulate in the console office, you could actually hide under the desk. Because of the different lighting, you were impossible to see. You could be a sneaky Pete under the desk and pop out once attackers planted the diffuser. On Old Skyscraper, you could actually counter the guy sitting out on the tower pretty easily by looking through this bullet hole and shooting through the cracks of time. This is another Z-Min concept for a Jackal rework, where instead of pinging exactly where enemies are, it would ping the room they are in instead, which I think is a great idea. You used to be able to put a breach charge on glass, which would make it nearly silent on the other side of the window. Now, when you put it down, it breaks all the glass, which is one of the loudest things you can do. And shout out to Ice from my Discord for the breach charge clips. Another spot where you could climb over a mirror window was on Presidential Plane. This one would let you get up in one of the beds, which was a great spot to catch anyone off guard pushing in from the cockpit. You used to be able to get out of the map on Coastline. There was really no point in doing this, except for fun. But you need to hop over this couch and rappel down outside where the rocks are. Then you'd walk along the rocks until you got out on the boat. Once you were out here, you were stuck like Chuck, and the only way out was by falling out of the map. There was a glitch on Old Oregon that let you just vault under the map pretty easily. It was right on tower stairs, and once you were in here, you could walk around the map in between the floors. This is a Batman Vigil concept that someone made. I would 100% get this if they ever made something as cool as this. Either Christian Bale's Batman or Robert Pattinson's would be all-time goated. There used to be a glitch on Coastline, where if you knocked the paneling off the wall in 90, if you put a camera on the hookah wall, you could see through the wall into Penthouse. Not really worth all the effort in my opinion. In the kitchen on Villa, you could actually climb onto the fridge. It was really easy. You just had to climb onto the counter, then vault up. This was a great spot to sit. You could really be a sneaky Pete up there. On Oregon in the kids' bedroom, you could vault up on one of the bunk beds. You just had to break some of the wall and attic and hop right up. Back when there was an exploit with the deployable shield, shocker I know, it was actually straight up disabled, so you wouldn't spawn in with one. And shout out to LGG18 from my Discord for the clip. Back on Old Chalet when there were 4 windows above the garage, if you threw 2 frags in the right spot, they'd land perfectly where Amira would usually sit. Sadly, you can no longer do this since the windows are gone, and frags go off faster since they can't be cooked. On Old Skyscraper, it was actually pretty easy to counter anyone sitting out on the tower. You just had to go downtown Jimmy Brown in reception and look out the window. You could barely see the person, but if you locked in, you could give the guy a haircut without being seen. On Border, you used to be able to get out of the map and climb the mountain. You just had to climb up on the divider, then walk along and kind of shimmy your way out of the map. Then you could just walk up the mountain. However, this was high risk, low reward, since once you were out here, you were stuck like Chuck, and you could only see the break room door, and one wrong step would cause you to fall out of the map. Since Gridlock weighs nearly 18 tons, she was one of the only ones that was able to survive a T-Hunt bomber's blast. She would just eat the explosion like it was Thanksgiving dinner. For some reason, the ARX had no vertical or horizontal grip. Not sure if this had anything to do with Nomad missing fingers, or the devs felt that it didn't really need a grip. In Article 5, Nomad actually had all of her fingers. My guess for this is because it was probably a lot easier to just use the same hazmat suit model for everyone, rather than make a whole new one. On IQ's situation, originally the basement on Oregon was not accessible, but for whatever reason, after the rework you could still get into it from this one wall. There was even an ammo box down there for whatever reason, so I guess they originally intended for this area to be accessible. On Old Outback and T-Hunt, there were no bombers, nitro cells, or barbed wire anywhere on the map, unless you played the bomb or the defense game mode. So it was the best map to warm up on before they removed all that stuff from every map entirely. The cha-cha slide technique. This was pretty funny, but low-key a good way to catch attackers off guard, and you did it in style. Cha-cha real smooth right into a free pick. To elaborate on the cha-cha slide technique a bit more, you needed to have gadget deployment on advanced so you could cancel the battery. All you needed to do was hold out a battery and point it in the direction of barbed wire. Once you got the indication that you could place the battery, you'd start placing it down and then cancel it. Doing this would allow you to slide silently and catch people off guard. There was an all-time spawn peak on Old Favela that was facing the exit street spawn. All you needed to do was make a hole in the ants' apartment, then go upstairs in the ants' hall and make a hole so you could see through the cracks of time and look downtown Jimmy Brown in the alley, catching most attackers off guard, since they had to look at 2 spots. Another spot in the ants' hall was at the same wall to cover anyone running Uptown Funk. So if you had 2 people covering downtown and uptown, the attacker would be stuck like Chuck. On Old Favela in the 3rd floor packaging room, you could open up the wall and vault across to the sheet metal roof and smoke anyone running up the stairs. And this was back before the run-out time was 1 second. There was another great spawn peak on Favela. This time it was with a C4 on the rooftop, and you'd chuck it downtown Jimmy Brown, getting anyone running up the stairs, though this one was a lot safer. Back when Castle had a deployable shield, there was a crazy peek you could do on Old Chalet, where you could see out over the door if you stood on top of the shield and catch anyone walking down West Main. The attacker needed eagle eyes to spot you, since it was a crazy one-way angle. Another crazy spot with Castle on Chalet was in the storage room, where you once again could climb on the shield and look right into wine. This was great back when secure area was in ranked, since you only needed to lock down the garage. Another perfect spot to catch attackers off guard. Once again, another crazy castle spot on Old Chalet, this one being in the kitchen hall, and this would let you see out the little window in the kitchen. Another great spot to catch attackers off guard since they weren't expecting to look there. Smoke's gas used to clip through walls, making him one of the best defenders at the time. He's still really good now though. But you could deny plant while being completely safe, laying low like a buffalo. Sometimes if you vaulted something, you would end up floating on the other person's screen. This was pretty wild and gave you a crazy unintentional advantage since your head was basically in the ceiling for a couple seconds. I haven't seen this happen in a while, but sometimes the main menu would bug out and all the characters would be missing random parts of their body, as well as textures glitching out too, which was kinda creepy looking, but also kinda funny. Yet another castle spot using the deployable shield was in Connector on Old Consulate. This one would let you peek over the doorway, giving you an all-time angle onto yellow stairs, as well as the bathroom. However, your backside was extremely exposed from the window, so you needed to watch out for nefarious backshots. Sometimes people would be looking the complete opposite way and they'd still put you in a dirt coffin because on their screen they were looking at you, but on your screen, they were stuck like Chuck. Sometimes in the early days of Siege, you could run through a Capcan trap without setting it off, but then the guy behind you would run through and get smoked, which was absolutely hilarious. Sometimes when going through a wall that you made a small hole in, Not only were you stuck like Chuck in the wall, which can still happen to this day, but your whole body was stuck like Chuck in the same position. So you'd be sliding around the map, which was pretty funny looking. The cheat where the guy would have an insane FOV and he was absolutely zooming across the map. I haven't seen this exact cheat in a while, but I'm sure there are variations of it around since this season is full of cheaters. If you had a frost mat down in the right spot on Coastline and Hookah, you could actually catch someone's head through the floor in Sunrise if they vaulted over the bar. Sometimes on Coastline, vaulting into Courtyard, then vaulting into the kitchen hall too fast would be the end of you. I guess because the game thought you were falling out of the map, or there was a weird barrier there. The very first season of Siege, Operation Black Ice. There used to be a glitch where you would drop down multiple ranks. I'm pretty sure it would fix itself, but losing 850 ELO would be a crazy thing to see. When all the recoil got changed for the secondaries, the revolver actually became a viable secondary. It only took like 2 to 3 shots to put someone down, and you could actually see since it no longer kicked to the ceiling. When you were trying to lay low like a buffalo as Echo in this corner on Old Consulate in the kitchen, if you threw your yokai drone, sometimes it would bounce and get stuck like Chuck in the wall. And this was back when Echo only had one drone, so once you lost it, you were kinda useless. Especially if it fell out of the map like in this clip. Everyone always talks about how they miss the old lighting of Siege because it looked better, and believe me, I do too. But let me know in this clip when you spot the Thatcher. I'll slow it down too. I can definitely see why they decided to brighten things up. Big shout out to Moms Cooking from my Discord for the revolver, yokai, and lighting clip, Operation Health. Even though this season was pretty bad since we got absolutely no content, hearing the theme is still very nostalgic. Stadium Alpha got reworked twice, and they made a handful of changes, and a massive shout out to Kazonix from my Discord for all the screenshots. The second floor office hallway was changed a few times, especially with the lighting. It used to be a lot more red. The second floor armory actually got a major lighting change. Surprisingly, it got a lot darker with the new one. Same thing with the second floor kids' dormitory. It got a lot darker as the changes happened, which is kinda weird since you'd think they'd go the opposite way. Same thing with the second floor master bedroom with a few light designs changed too. Yellow stairs got a bit brighter though. Just want to point out it's day in the old and night in the new. The lighting in the second floor office stayed relatively the same, but the layout of stuff was changed up a bit, like the doorway in the corner. Same thing with the target room. It had a bunch of changes from the first to second version, as well as the lighting getting a bit darker. This is what the work in progress of Chalet looked like. It's pretty cool, but also strange seeing another chalet just floating in the sky. And it's interesting that it had collision, so Zero's cam could get in there. This is what it looked like to start up the work in progress build of Chalet, along with the work in progress build of Zero. Zero was pretty much completed at this point, but they still had placeholder images for a lot of the stuff, like Zero's new primary and his model. Most of the map wasn't fully rendered in, and it was a lot brighter. I'm guessing it's just easier to manage that way for the devs. Also, the hatches say something. It's too blurry to make all of it out, but I can see trapdoor and wood only. Some of these not fully rendered rooms also just reminds me of the back rooms, especially bar. That little hallway behind bar I can never remember the name of in games. Here's a little bit more of Stadium Alpha and the changes. The dining room stayed the same except for the lighting change. The back hallway changed a lot. Doorways got moved around, walls got shifted over, corners changed, and of course the lighting was changed. Shout out to Kazonix for the chalet and stadium stuff. This was the work in progress build of Reworked House. Just like Chalet, there's a second version floating in the sky. If someone knows why they do this, be sure to let me know in the comments. The work in progress logo was everywhere in the selection screen, and this was when Oryx, Iana, Ace, and Malusi were all still works in progress as well. Although Oryx was basically done at this point, but his icon and dash logo weren't there yet. As you can see, similar to Chalet, most of the walls aren't fully textured yet. But it is interesting to see that some of the walls are covered in grids, and the destructible walls are covered in the word breakable, with a picture on them as well. Some of the rooms look more finished than others too, and unlike Chalet, the hatches are normal looking with no text on them. Not sure what that is on the left, but it says, "Override me, wood only." These windows weren't fully finished either, since you can see through the cracks of time. And it's interesting to see how it just says girls' room above the door. Outside of house looked mostly finished, except for the floating house in the sky. I'm also curious what the height limit of Oryx's jump is, if he'd be able to jump up to the second house in the sky if there was a broken hatch, since there's no bottom floor. I'd imagine if you could jump up there, you'd end up stuck like Chuck. I'm pretty sure I've covered something similar to this a while back, but you used to be able to get out of pretty much any building during the prep phase. The first method was with Tachanka's turret. All you needed to do was place down the turret in the doorway, hop on it, and then hop off. This would then teleport you in front of the turret, putting you outside during the prep phase. The other method was with the most broken item in Siege history, the deployable shield. For this one, all you needed to do was put this right up against a doorway. You would then pick up the shield from the other side, and this would teleport you outside. Pretty easy to do and extremely broken and overpowered. And shout out to Reginald Cranberry for sending me the video. In the very early build of Siege, they actually tested out the concept of respawning mid-round. This obviously didn't make it to the full game, but it would have been interesting if it was added in. Siege would have been an entirely different game, and possibly not as popular either. There used to be a really rare glitch where you could pick up an impact grenade that was thrown at you. I honestly have no clue what could have caused this, but it was really cool. This is in the very early development of Siege, where they are doing the motion capture for rappelling. It looks like pretty much all of this did actually make it into the game, and it's really cool to see something that stayed relatively the same throughout the 9 years of Siege. Looks like they got every position possible, even a position to give your friend nefarious backshots while he's downtown Jimmy Brown. The only change is that it's a bit faster now, so it would be cool to see that updated motion capture. It's funny to see the guy getting flipped upside down too. Wouldn't want to get stuck like Chuck upside down though. But recording this just looks like a lot of fun. Here's more pictures of Stadium Alpha changes. This one was the classroom. Not too many changes for this one, mostly just lighting. The back hallway had a lot of changes. A whole wall got removed, and the entire hallway got extended out. The lobby had a wall added but a doorway removed on opposite sides. And of course, some lighting changes. I've talked about this a bit previously, but during Operation Chimera, you could get 2 Ash Elite skins for free, Sidewinder and Black Viper. To elaborate on how you could get 2 free skins, the first method was what you just saw, getting it out of a Chimera pack. This was the only way to get the Black Viper variant of the skin. The Sidewinder skin was given out to everyone who played during a certain time during Operation Chimera, because Ubisoft was going to raise the price of either the game or in-game items. Either way, there was immense backlash, so Ubisoft gave everyone who played at the time the Sidewinder Ash Elite. All the different poses for the winner's screen for Recruit. Since there were so many combos you could use with all the different CTUs, there were all types of unique outros you could get. My favorite has to be Shield Team 6. And of course the very old operator selection screen with all of the recruits saluting. The vibes of Nighttime Tower. This map might be horrendous, but it was still a lot of fun. And the night version just reminds me of Christmas of 2017. Especially hearing that classic white noise theme. Anthony Pitt's meme videos. Some of the best meme videos and an absolute pioneer for Siege memes.
5 seconds.
He actually did post something on his YouTube about making a return to these videos about 2 weeks ago, so hopefully he goes through with it. The old alibi Prisma glitch. Sometimes you'd throw down your Prisma and it would get stuck like Chuck and just roll around instead of opening up, sometimes resulting in a tragedy if you were setting up after the round started. The old Warden hand glitch. This one was pretty funny and didn't affect anything, but Warden's hand could be backwards sometimes. Warden's run is already goofy looking, and this was just the cherry on top. Back when Plane was in ranked, a good way to counter Glaz was to actually use his own bullet holes he put in the window against him. I'm not too sure if this still works since Plane is only in casual, which I never play. This is the work in progress build of Reworked Oregon. It says V2 all over the selection screen. And this was also when Oryx and Malusi were still works in progress. Oryx was pretty much done, but Malusi didn't have anything yet. And it's funny to see her placeholder name is Slowpoke. For the most part, the map looks pretty finished, but the textures look very different all over the place. The freezer wall says breakable on it, but only on the side actually in the freezer. And some of the stuff in the freezer has grids all over it. Pillar looks different, as well as the blue bunker having some additional items lying around. The outside bunker isn't finished at all with the grid textures everywhere. This is interesting because the supply room has a wall in it. It would have been interesting to see this make the final cut in the map, since this would make default plant much safer for attackers. The carpet textures weren't finished in meeting either, and they say, "Override me carpet" on them. And of course, the outside has another version of the map floating above it. In the very early build of Siege, they actually had a mini-map. While this probably would be way too overpowered for everyone to have since it would give away too much information, it wouldn't be a bad idea to be able to pull up a map and see an entire layout of the floor you're on. It would look something like this, and they could even put in an arrow to show where you're at and which direction you're facing. I think this could help newer players learn maps, but also for players to learn maps that are always banned, like Lair. Another thing in early development were the different ways of gathering visual intel. A camera network with fixed and controllable cameras, which is what we have now on defense. A flying drone that would circle the building and provide surveillance of the outside building, and ground-based drones, which we got for attackers. The surveillance drone sort of got added, because if any defender goes outside, they automatically get detected. Would have been cool to see an actual drone flying around though. Now I'm not sure if this is still a thing, but if it isn't, when you were staring down the barrel of an enemy, and their laser was right in your eyes. People don't really use lasers anymore, so I honestly don't know if it's still around. The old fuse cluster charge animation. It's not too different, but it looks a bit more clunky and it feels a bit faster now too. Operation Dustline's theme, just an iconic season. Here's another work-in-progress build of a reworked map. This one is Skyscraper. This was also when Aruni was still a work-in-progress too. Similar to the other maps, the layout was pretty much finished, but a lot of the stuff isn't fully textured yet. And also Aruni's punch didn't make any noise yet. The entire ceiling on the bedroom and bathroom side of the map says breakable on it, and this is what the Aruni gate originally looked like in development. The walls are missing upstairs on the little hop-ups next to Drum and Dragon, which is interesting. I'm guessing to make it a little bit easier to hold Drum and so you can hide on those hop-ups. Another big change is the window between Dragon and Terrace. Not sure what I'd like better, but again, I'd imagine it was changed to make things easier to hold. There's also no minibar to sit behind, and Exhibition looks a lot more open. Shout out to Kazonix from my Discord for sending me the work-in-progress map. A while back, Priest modded an ACOG onto Ella's SMG. The recoil was outrageous, but this would probably be so fun to use if it made its way into the game. Kazonix sent me another work-in-progress version of a reworked map. This time it's Hereford base. However, this one is crazy because it's not even close to being finished, and there's still a lot of parts of the old map still there. The basement's ceiling is lowered, and almost nothing is textured yet. Just grids and the breakable walls everywhere. The ladder to go upstairs is gone, and instead replaced with a doorway that leads to a whole new area for the reworked version. This area hasn't been properly lit yet either, and the stairs actually are clipping through the ground outside of the building. The first floor is pretty much the same as old Hereford, but obviously once again lacking textures. But there is an additional room behind the dining room. Part of the front door is blocked off with a wall, and then there's a new staircase in the garage. This was one of the original designs of the hostage. I'm not really sure why they decided to change this one up. It wasn't a bad design, but this guy has nothing on the E3 hostage. The original recruit design. I think I like this better than what we ended up getting and what we have now. He definitely looks more like a special agent, but it would be cool if Ubisoft added in uniforms from the pre-alpha. The original logos for operators. These were interesting because they aren't the same as the beta. This is one where I do like the current designs a bit better, although Pulses on the far right is pretty cool. And these are what the beta logos look like, just to compare them as well. Some of these are really cool, my favorite probably being Glaz. Another thing about the pre-alpha was how bright the white outline around the operators were. While it is nice to see where your teammates are at, I can see why they dialed it back a bit since it's kinda distracting. It used to take multiple hits from Sledge's big hammer to break open a hatch entirely. Thankfully, this was changed to one swing, and his overall destruction was increased. Shout out to Ice from my Discord for that first clip, but in this clip, you can see super early development of nitro cells. They originally looked like landmines and had a radius type thing when they were thrown out. This is more of the work in progress of Hereford base's rework. The second floor looks very squished together, and a lot of the stuff isn't textured yet. This chair was really close to the wall, and Kazonix got stuck like Chuck behind it. There are some random items that are just floating, and there's a new area for the rework outside of the kid's bedroom. Going up to the 3rd floor, you can see that where one of the old doorways was, and the 3rd floor itself looks the least finished, with none of the walls being textured. Not too much going on uptown funk on the rooftop, just a lack of textures. Operation Skull Rain just reminds me of summertime. This iconic old Bolo clip where he gets a crazy 2-piece through the wall. This spawn peek on Old Hereford base where you'd peek out on the 2nd floor balcony and you'd be able to see right into one of the attackers' spawns. Of course, having a Jaeger ACOG made things a lot easier. And another old spawn peek on Hereford on the 3rd floor looking through the cracks of time into the attacker's spawn. I definitely miss Old Hereford base in Ranked. Even though it didn't play that well, it was still fun. Old Model on Canal used to look a lot different, and the lower bridge was the only bridge. The Madhouse event. Since it's spooky season, it's only fitting that we cover the Madhouse event a bit, courtesy of Varsity Reviews. One of the first events we got, and it had some of the coolest skins. I really like the Valkyrie skin, and I'm pretty sure most of these skins are on the marketplace now. The lighting in this map was very attacker favored, because it was so dark out. Let me know when you spot the thermite outside. Yeah, I couldn't see him either, but he was out there sitting in the treehouse. This was some of the madhouse outside. Pretty cool atmosphere with jack-o'-lanterns and gargoyles everywhere, as well as a bunch of various spooky sounds. Do you think Madhouse should return in the future? There used to be a glitch where you could have multiple lion drones spawned in, and it was pretty loud. In the 2nd year of Doctor's Curse, they added in a Rooney, and the game became less hide-and-seek, and more of just a camp in a certain spot, which was pretty lame. The 1st year was definitely the best year. In the 1st and 2nd year of Doctor's Curse, Oryx wasn't in the game mode, so you had to sacrifice a teammate just to get to people hiding in weird spots, which made this game mode super defender-sided. Aruni Gates also did 70 damage instead of 30, so this just made things even more difficult. And of course, this meant you couldn't get yourself out of a frost mat. Do you think the frost mat change should be reverted, or should it stay how it is now where you can pick yourself up? There were only 3 attackers in the 1st and 2nd year, the Stalker, the Lurcher, and the Prowler. So like I said before, it was definitely more defender-sided. The 1st year was a lot of fun on both sides though. The Sugar Fright event.
Is this real life? Or is this a sugar fantasy? Only one way to find out.
Sugar Fright was just like Kill Confirmed from Call of Duty, and the map was based off of an old Rainbow Six map called Street. Sugar Fright had some really interesting skins that turned a bunch of operators into Muppets. All these skins can be bought on the marketplace now, but they were a bit rare for a while since the game mode was only 2 weeks. There are skins for Frost, Thermite, IQ, Ella, Capitao, Zofia, Nomad, Castle, Pulse, and Goyo. I'm surprised we haven't seen a version of this game mode return in the arcade playlist. Along with this map, I feel like it would be a great fit for that playlist. This was the replacement for Doctor's Curse for Halloween of 2020 and hasn't been back since. My guess is that this was an early test for a warm-up game mode. It's also only the 3rd Halloween event they've done, the other 2 being Doctor's Curse and Madhouse. What do you like better? Sugar Fright, Doctor's Curse, or Madhouse? The Showdown event. One of my personal favorite events, and I'd love to see it make a return, maybe as a permanent mode in the arcade playlist. The Showdown event came out for the first time in 2019 and made its return in 2021 and has not been back since. It was a 3 versus 3 secure area on a map called Fort Truth, uniquely designed for this mode. Everyone had the Boss G and the revolver, with attackers having nades and smokes, and defenders having deployable shields and barbed wire. The cosmetics were pretty cool. They had skins for Twitch, Ash, Capitao, Rook, Maverick, Maestro, Alibi, Glaz, Cade, and Caveira. I'm guessing these are all on the R6 marketplace at this point. There were also 2 cool Easter eggs, one being the Smasher Skull from the Outbreak event, and the other being the DeLorean from Back to the Future Part 3. What do you think? Should Showdown return? Or should Ubisoft make new limited time modes? And do you think Fort Truth would be a good addition to the arcade playlist? Since it's the Christmas season, this was one of the packs Ubisoft gave away a few years ago. If you didn't have all the ops, you would get a free one, but if you had everyone, they would give you a free Ash Elf skin, which is pretty cool and always great to bring out during this time of year. This was one of the original Christmas skins called Ralphie that came out all the way back in 2015. I couldn't find it on the marketplace either, so if that's the case, this is probably one of the rarest skins in the game. Since it's been 9 years since Siege launched, this is what it looked like to launch the game for the first time all the way back on December 1st of 2015.
Hey everyone, welcome to the end of the video. If you made it all the way here, thank you so much. This is a year's worth of content packed into one video. By the time this video comes out, it'll be 1 year since my first Old Siege compilation was uploaded. So I kinda wanted to clean up the first video as well as a handful of things in the other ones. It's honestly pretty crazy because I didn't expect the video to take off at all. It was really just meant for a handful of my TikTok followers that asked me to put everything into one video. But because of that one video, in the span of a year, this channel has grown so much. We're currently over 27,000 subs, as well as my TikTok hitting over 250,000 followers. It was also really cool to see Siege creators react to my video, taking a trip down memory lane.
Yo, subscribe to that guy, Gazebo Meister. My boy, you made a banger. I'm not even gonna lie. This was one of my favorite videos I've ever reacted to. This might have been my favorite video I've ever reacted to.
Bro, that was a goated video, bro. What? I'm leaving a like. And I'm saying W video.
Shout out to the Gazebo Meister because he's put together a ton of old Siege compilations. Go check out his channel.
Like I said in my last video, that would be the last Old Siege video, at least in that style. And I wasn't kidding, since this is just a big compilation of all the Old Siege stuff. However, I still do have some Old Siege video ideas up my sleeve, so this definitely isn't the end. I have been messing around with the Siege map editor called Heated Metal, which you can see on my YouTube shorts, but let me know if you'd be interested in seeing stuff like that, either in a compilation or its own dedicated video. So to wrap things up, I want to say thank you again to everyone for not only watching my videos, but sharing their thoughts in the comments and keeping Old Siege alive. It's always important to remember where you started. But that's about it for now, and I hope to see you in my future videos.
Let's see what else Paul Allen remembers about Old Siege.